It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy Anako's here. Jason Snell's here. Alex Lindsay has the day off, but good news from Apple insider Stephen Robles, the bearded teacher, joins us. We will talk about the invites. They went out. Who got them? Who didn't? And what are the differences? Plus, where's the AR version? What will Apple announce September 12th? Oh, gave away the date. And why we think maybe the iPad might be the next computer in your life. All that coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 884, recorded Tuesday, August 29th, 2023. Kookookachu. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by ACI Learning. IT skills are outdated in about 18 months. Launch or advance your career today with quality, affordable, entertaining training. Individuals use the code TWIT30 for 30% off a standard or premium individual IT Pro membership at go.acilearning.com/twit. And by ZocDoc, the free app where you can find and book appointments online with thousands of top-rated, patient-reviewed physicians and specialists. Filter specifically for the ones who take your insurance, are located near you, and treat almost any condition. Go to ZocDoc.com/MacBreak and download the ZocDoc app for free. And by Mylio. Mylio Photos is a smart and powerful system that lets you easily organize, edit, and manage years of important documents, photos, and videos in an offline library hosted on any device. And it's free. Visit mylio.com/twit. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show we cover the latest news from Apple. And yes, there is news, but we'll get to that in a moment. Jason Snell is here from 6colors.com. Hello, Jason.
Hey, Leo. Good to be here.
Zeppelin.flights/J Snell for his Mastodon.
For your Mastodon.
He runs his very own Mastodon, the incomparable Mastodon.
Mm-hmm.
His very own. I like that. Zeppelin.flights.
Vanity domains. It's good.
It's a good one. I have
feature of
twit.social.
Mastodon.
It's kind of boring now, I think. You know? I wonder if I can get twit.zeppelin. Oh, no, you already own the Zeppelin. Never mind. Andy Anako from beautiful New England, WGBH, Boston. Hello, Andrew.
Hey, can you get twit.heligyro or something?
Yeah, I need some vintage, twit.phaeton or some vintage vehicle to go.
Something that a crackpot inventor in a 1960s Disney movie would be traveling around in.
Chittybangbang.com. Good to see you, Andrew. I'm going to be out your way. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But first, I want to welcome from hurricane-soaked Florida, Mr. Stephen Robles. Hello, Stephen.
Hello. Thanks for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here.
The bearded teacher, beard.fm. I'm going to get a little update on Podcast Movement because I know you were there because you did a whole show with Micah.
I did. We did it live on the show floor, and I used all the AI tools to get that noise out of there.
Boy, Lisa, who was also there, told me that she did a panel and you couldn't hear anything because all the panels were in the same area, all highly amplified. It sounded awful.
Yeah. What could possibly go wrong putting 5 live stages on the expo floor, hall? No problem.
Crazy.
Not a problem at all. Yeah.
Crazy.
We could discuss.
Yeah, we'll discuss that. But first, I think there's some news from Apple. The word of the hour.
No, it's not news. It's news that there will be news. It's not actually news.
No, this is news. Look, we've been holding on for this for some time.
Okay, let's call it news. Fine.
Mark
Gurman, the whip, and we jump right through that hoop, don't we?
Yeah, whatever they want. Mark Gurman said it would be September 12th, the iPhone 15 Apple Watch Series 9 event. And sure, lo and behold, it's announced. You got the invite, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, it was showing up in everybody's mailboxes. It's, what do they call it? It's a Wonderlust, not Wanderlust. Wonderlust.
First of all, I'm shocked. Shocked, I tell you, that Apple used the word lust in a sentence. So Wanderlust is what? The desire to travel. What's Wonderlust?
I wonder how Apple managed to managed to screw up USB-C so they could still be as defiant as saying, no, you didn't make us do anything we didn't want to do. Enjoy your like 1200 baud data connections. Stupid person.
I love it.
I'm counting on Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt's coming.
Thunderbolt. Oh, there's the wonder. Wonder. So I don't know. I mean, I guess the good news is you can Google Wonderlust and pretty much find Apple right away. So by making up a name, they've come up.
Just another marketing tag to let us spin our wheels for another couple of weeks. But the idea here is that we're going to get that iPhone event, and it's going to happen, like Mark Gurman said, and iPhone and Apple Watch, and who knows if there'll be anything other than that. I guess we'll get spoiled about all that in the next couple of weeks, because this is when the rumors really start flying.
Don't confuse it with the 2020 movie Wonderlust. The preacher's in love with the sunshine schizophrenic. The range runner has a family of 5 with one more on the way. And the professor is a cerebral alcohol aficionado. As for Slab City's unofficial sheriff, he shot and killed his stepfather at age 6.
That's it. You spoiled it. That's what it is.
Here's the movie that Apple will be playing on the stage. Tim Cook's going to come out and say, "Good morning. We'd like to show you a movie about a preacher in love with a sunshine schizophrenic." That would be funny, but not for very long. So they are going to announce what, Jason?
iPhone, Apple Watch, maybe other things related to those. If you think about it, the Apple Watch is kind of the ultimate iPhone accessory, but they'll have a new set of accessories, and maybe it'll be an AirPods thing or not. I don't know, but like it would not be a bad time for that. Maybe they could do a reset on some of their services. It is the thing I always think about the iPhone event is that it is Apple's most watched event of the year. It is the most popular product, and so people pay attention, which not only means that they'll talk about the new iPhone, but they're going to talk about other stuff that they want to get in front of people's eyes. So whatever that might be, this is your chance to get out in front of the biggest audience you get in a year. And all of us who work in media around Apple know that this is the one that has the biggest audience. Like, people are interested in the iPhone. So new high-end iPhone is the rumor, right? We've been talking about it all summer. Titanium instead of stainless steel, which is great because stainless steel is really heavy, and so these should be lighter phones. Change the colors. A lot of rumors about camera upgrades, USB-C. There's a bunch of stuff that they're throwing in here. I think that this is potentially the most appreciable iPhone change in the last like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, particularly for camera fans, and also we're still hearing rumors left and right about maybe we're going to see a price increase, at least on the Pros, that some people aren't going to like. Who knows? But we'll find out in a couple of weeks anyway. But I'm keen to say Apple's probably one of the few companies that can get by with saying, you know what, we have decided to jack up the price of our very, very tippity-toppity most phones by another, let's say, $100, because A, we know that people can absorb it, and B, if it puts some distance between the Pros and the more affordable ones, it will make the more affordable ones seem like budget phones, and that's right up our alley too.
I'm also curious, the whole ecosystem of Lightning devices that is still out there, like the MagSafe Duo, Apple's MagSafe battery pack, all the AirPods cases, and even AirPods Max, how many of those will actually see switch to USB-C along with the phone? I would think AirPods, at least it might be a case update. Even if they don't release new versions of it, they might say now shipping with USB-C, or you can buy a USB-C case. But things like the MagSafe Duo, I think, is long due for a refresh. I use it still sometimes, but like even with the Apple Watch, it's a little janky. You can't really have the little Apple Watch charger all the way up at 90 degrees because the Apple Watch is too big. So curious how they're going to refresh those different devices to match USB-C alongside with the iPhone 15.
Yeah. Wonder if they're going to have a new. They already have like a USB-C to Lightning cable, but I wonder if they're going to do like a dongle, like when they replace the coin slot, the standard iPod connector with Lightning.
Do they need to though? I mean, I think actually in some ways it's good. Apple says it, but don't worry, all those Lightning cables and accessories you bought will still be useful for charging your AirPods. So there's that.
Yeah, congratulations. We no that Apple could come out saying our customers love the lightning cable, and we're happy to announce that you can still carry one with you wherever you go because your AirPods won't be able to charge with USB-C.
Is that the only thing left? They changed the Apple TV remote to Type-C, right?
All the Mac accessories, trackpad and mouse and keyboard are all Lightning.
And aren't there some earlier like cheaper iPads that are still Lightning?
Maybe.
Sure.
Yet? Yeah.
That haven't been updated. There, I think there are there iPads? The iPads, there's like the previous generation iPad, I think, that's still kicking out there. But they've been turning over a lot of their products for a while now. But this is why a lot of us say there are rumors that the iMac is going to finally get an M3 this fall. Seems like the right time for them to refresh their keyboard and mouse and trackpad so that they don't charge on Lightning, and we can just clear Lightning out of the entire product line.
But Steven makes a good point that I wonder how many features this USB-C connector are going to have. Like, it would be wonderful if it were Thunderbolt, like on the iPad Pros. You might.
That's expensive, though. The licensing for Thunderbolt is expensive. I don't see Apple.
It's expensive. I mean, they could put it on the Pros, especially if they say, "Hey, look how big the video files that we're creating with our new wonderful high definition stuff are." It would be incredible if they use that connector to also do things like, guess what? You can also connect video directly to the bottom of the device. Again, but this would be another reason to say, here's why the iPhone, the Pro line is a very, very special rarefied sort of device. It does things that are for people who just want the phone that has absolutely everything in it, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense. I don't think you're going to see like a second screen capability on an iPhone ever, but it would be interesting to see, like, if they decide to put Lightning on it, what they would allow that port to do.
Or Thunderbolt. Yeah, that's the.
I'm sorry, Thunderbolt.
That's the question. I don't know. I mean, I think that it's not a high percentage chance, but like, how do you define Pro? I mean, they've already got Stage Manager on the iPad. Like, would they ever think like, yeah, it's Pro? If you want to plug that Thunderbolt into a display, you get basically like Stage Manager, like it's an iPad, and you can work on that if you want to. I doubt they'll do that. I think they want you to buy an iPad or a Mac to do that. But like, you do think that they've got to be running through all the ideas of like, how do we define a Pro feature? What are the things that we can put in this phone to justify its higher price and potentially its higher price?
So I'm on the Apple website with the little dissolving apple on my iPhone. How do I do the VR with this? Where can I make the apple appear dissolving in my?
I don't think there's an AR feature this year.
Yeah, 9 to 5 Mac says that this is the first time since 2020 when they've had one of these invites that did not have an AR like Easter egg.
There you go. They're giving up on AR. I knew they would. The Vision Pro is history. It's all over.
Yeah.
Why didn't they do it?
I'm sorry. I like bandwagons. It sounds like
gotta hop on that bandwagon.
You got to wait for the Vision Pro now. It's not good enough unless it's
okay. Maybe that's it. Like, we would do it, but we want you to do it right. Wonderlust.
That was AR for poor people, and Apple is not in the poor people AR
not
business.
Anymore, baby. Get your checkbook ready. Please join us for a special Apple event broadcasting from Apple Park. That's interesting. Have they used that phrase broadcasting before? Or they finally decided to let you know it's not going to be anything that you couldn't see at home?
Yeah, I think they've done that before.
Okay.
I think that the idea is that they're streaming. That's for the stream, right? There are two invitations, right? There's the invitation to come to Apple Park, and there's the invitation to watch the stream.
Oh, interesting. So baby Mark Gurman, like me,
he's invited to watch. Well, Leo, were you invited to watch the stream though? Because if you weren't,
I wasn't even invited to watch the stream. I wasn't even invited.
It might be a little embarrassing for you to watch it if you weren't invited.
You can't even watch the stream, Laporte. Well, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway.
Oh,
September 12th, which is a Tuesday, right? 10 a.m. Pacific time. I will be in Rhode Island at my mom's. So I guess I'll be doing the show from my mom's basement. Something many have thought I should be anyway.
You're right. I think this is a time where you want to be with family.
Yeah.
You want to be sharing this momentous moment together.
Yeah. My sister, my mom, and I will be holding hands when they announce the iPhone 15.
I have a cousin who's going to freak out when she learns that there's a periscope camera involved. It's, she has a thing about periscopes. We don't know how it happened, but
Will there be a crank though? Because if there could only be a crank, then I would be interested.
You could be the crank, Leo.
I am the crank. Thank you very much. So yours does not say, it's funny that Gurman got one that says, watch the stream at apple.com.
He was invited for a little while, but then he wasn't. Apple's, I will say this about that event.
Good company.
That event is at the Steve Jobs Theater, and it's got a pretty decent capacity, but again, the iPhone event is the biggest event, and it's also the most international event. They invite media from all over the world to come to that event. There's a lot of broadcast media that comes to that event. It is the toughest of all of the tickets when there's an event at Apple Park because of the interest in the iPhone, and they do make a real effort to get people there from all over the world. And so it's always the one where you see people getting... some people get invited and some people don't. And then like people sneak in later when other people are dropping out. And it's a tough ticket. It's like, any tough ticket for a concert or something like that. You can tell they're not as free with the invitations as they are for something like a Mac event, certainly, or even WWC, where they've got a lot of extra
space. You don't have to make me feel better.
That's why
I didn't even get I didn't even get the invite Mark Gurman got. For just say, watch this online. Here's the one that you got, Jason, that says, "Oh, please join us in person for a special
you
Apple.
Get a little Apple Wallet pass and everything with
at
that
the Steve Jobs Theater in Apple Park, September 12th, 10 a.m. Pacific. RSVP." So, did you RSVP already?
Yeah, click that little button. Yeah, click the button.
I keep clicking it. Nothing happens.
If you don't know French, they don't want you. That's for an American company.
Isn't that funny? Répondez, s'il vous plaît.
Répondez-vous, s'il vous plaît. Yeah. But Jason raises a good point. It's like there's been a shift like in the past 5 or 10 years where it's like most of the seats in that theater are for specific purposes, so to speak. Where it's not that, hey, we're going to get if we've got 500 invites to give to the press, we're going to get the 500 most influential members of the press, or the 500 members of the press with the largest audience. There's going to be some seats that we want to fill because they are YouTubers with really huge audiences. Some we're going to fill because they work for newspapers and journalistic outposts of record. Some where this is part of the marketing that we're not really reaching, and we want to make sure we reach out to this part of the market or this part of the country, and people who just have a really good relationship with Apple, and that's not meant as a sucky uppy sort of thing. It means that they're very, very good at here's what I would like, here's what I need. If this is available, this would be great. And so if it turns out that there are seats available, then this person who you may not have heard of and you don't think, goodness, this person doesn't have much of an audience, that's how they get in, because they are very, very good at doing their job, which is to if there's a seat there, I want to try to get in there. And so that's why they sort of keep tugging at the ear and that sort of thing. So it's not so there. I mean, what Jason could probably remember, there was like, who was that was tracking, like they're maintaining a chart of who got invited, who didn't get invited, who got early hardware, who did not get early hardware. And it's like, oh geez, this is, I mean, this is, high school was a long time ago and I don't want to do that again.
And their ways are mysterious. I mean, there are different PR groups and different marketing groups, and they all have different reasons. This has always been the case, dating back to the early days of Steve Jobs. Sometimes people get invitations and you're like, why? And other people don't. And you're like, huh? And that's just, they have different allotments for different things. And so you'll have like print journalists and broadcast journalists and YouTubers and podcasters, and like everybody's in a different slot. And then international PR, which is not domestic PR. And then there's the VIPs and the analysts and anybody who's mentioned in the keynote, and like all of those things go into it. it is complicated. And like I said, this is the toughest ticket.
Yeah. And they also include some seats, I think, still for engineers, people who are working the crunch hours. It's a sort of a thank you very much for working so hard to get this through the door. We're getting you a seat at the event so that you can be there when we show off all of your
the
work.
Apple people sit in front, Jason, and then
generally VIPs and the Apple people sit in front. Although now that they don't show that, they're just showing a video. I think maybe the rules are a little bit different. Like, do you need to be in the theater to show your product off when nobody's going to see it because nobody's actually watching the theater? They're just watching the video on the screen. Maybe, but the rule, so it's a little bit different because you're not part of the show when you're there. But it used to be they would stack up Apple employees and VIPs down at the bottom by the stage, and they were the ones who you could actually. There was no applause sign, but you could tell when they were expected to applaud in order to create that kind of like momentary audience feel.
Expectant pause in the flow, like.
By the end, the applauses happened before the applause line. And it was really like by the end of their live events, they were really pumping that up.
See, Tim, I'm applauding. I'm applauding, Tim. Yeah. See?
Yeah.
Okay. That's another thing. I often speculate about. Remember that the Steve Jobs Theater was purpose built for like media events like these, just like the Coliseum was meant for breads and circuses. Like, does anybody think there's a 0% chance that part of the air conditioning system is the ability to put more oxygen into the room when they feel the event should have as much oxygen in the room as possible?
I think it's a Letterman-esque thing where they keep the like
really
meat locker, so you can never fall asleep, and you're always in there,
wide awake. We keep it pretty cool in here too, because as you know, I'm prone to drifting off. All right.
That's bad for the press because we have to wear those like Bob Cratchit fingerless mittens, because we got to keep our joints limber as we're typing and taking notes.
Oh, okay. This will be fun. We know everything there is to know at this point about the iPhone 15. Although there was an interesting story from ming-chi, as Rene Ritchie likes to call him, ming-chi Kuo. That Apple is already shipping in vast quantities the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Like it's on the boat on its way here. There was a rumor that Sony couldn't supply camera parts fast enough, right? And so that it was going to be one of those things where the main phone was going to be available in 2 weeks or next week, but the other phone was going to be in October or something like that. And ming-chi Kuo is super reliable supply chain guy. And he's like, no, they're making lots of them. So that doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be limited supply and that you might get back ordered, but it does sound like it's not going to be one of those, we don't have them for a month kind of things. Maybe. Kuo writes, the market, and I'm reading a translation from Apple Insider, your publication, Stephen. The market is concerned that iPhone 15 shipments will be further cut due to supply chain issues. My estimate of 80 million units versus conservative views of 70 to 80 million units, especially the iPhone 15 Pro Max shipments will be delayed. However, the fact is the iPhone 15 Pro Max will start mass shipments this week, and that is this week. And Apple's also increasing shipments of legacy models simultaneously. So, no, there sounds like probably, there won't be a shortage on any of the 15s and even some of the older ones.
It does seem like, though, this is one of the years where the Pro Max is going to be a different camera than the Pro model. And I think the last time this happened was the iPhone 12. It's been parity on the 13 and 14, but it seems like maybe that periscope camera is going to be reserved just for the larger size because physics and engineering. And so even if it's available at the same time, I don't know, I'm curious to see. I think it's going to be a different year for the Pro and Pro Max cameras.
It also, the rumor is it's going to be more expensive. Like a couple $100 more, which means we're really pushing. We're getting closer and closer to that $2,000 mark.
Yeah, but it's okay because I think we're always going to be debating what does the word Pro mean, what does the word Max mean. I mean, what does it signify? I think they've spent enough time establishing this as, no, this is not necessarily like the phone for the masses. This is designed to be the most expensive phone that we make. And whereas other companies make super expensive phones because they have folding screens, we are putting I don't know, Cupertino Elfin Magic into ours, Wiffle Dust on top of every pixel. And so long as they can back it up, the Apple, the Apple market is such that there are people that will not think twice about spending an extra $200 to have the very best version of the iPhone that they can get. And I mean, I don't think Apple is a company, such a style-driven company, that they're not going to give you exclusive features that are going to be highly desirable. But I think that their focus is always going to be on the real iPhone is the iPhone nothing. And we're going to give the best experiences to the people who are going to be buying the most quantities of this specific phone. It's the top level Pro models that allow us to really flex and try out things that we're not going to be able to put into mass market phones for another couple of years yet.
Yeah.
Is this the year Dynamic Island comes to the 15, or do we think it's another year away?
Well, the rumor was that Dynamic Island would come to the 15 and leave the Pro Max, that they were going to go. I don't know what these rumors mean.
I don't believe that. I think they like the Dynamic Island and that it's a signature feature, and that they'll put it everywhere because it's a nice. It's not just a way to get around cutouts on your screen, but it's also kind of the modern iPhone equivalent of the status bar, the menu bar on the Mac. It's a good, useful place to put information. Every time I travel, I use Flighty, which is a travel tracking app, and it uses the Dynamic Island to put up like when your flight's leaving and what gate it's at, and like it's really great. So I think it's going to be everywhere. I think they like it, and it's one of these, like the notch was before, but it's like an identifying feature of the iPhone that makes you go, that's an iPhone. Yeah. So I think it'll be everywhere.
Yeah,
it's one of the most brilliant thing. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
I'm finally seeing more like apps actually using it too. I actually recently saw Instagram, for better or for worse, like if you're going to upload a story, it actually puts the upload progress up there in the Dynamic Island, because Instagram's weird where if you navigate away from the app and you're adding a story, sometimes it doesn't finish. Well, now it actually gives you some of that progress as like a live activity, which I thought was pretty cool. So, and it's been a year, but I think we're going to see more apps start using it to better effect.
Yeah, Google. There's a rumor that Google is actually going to have their live activities ready in time for the iPhone 15, which is good. I mean, it really is one of the most, in the history of Apple, I think it's one of the most brilliant user interface elements they've ever done. And it's almost incidental that it solves a big problem, which is, oh gosh, we won't be able to get the bezels we want unless we have we've mastered this sort of under display camera and sensor technology, which is not really working great as far as every parts manufacturer that I've heard of that's trying to do like under display fingerprint sensors, under display cameras, under display FLIR and that sort of stuff. And they've taken it, just basically made this entire thing just an obsolete question, because it's not just a workaround or a hack. It really is just, it's almost as if that's the way they designed that thing to be from the very, very beginning. It is exactly the sort of elegance that and fascinating user face elements that you kind of want to see from Apple. They're not being stagnant. It proves that they're still thinking and they're still coming up with great ideas.
Is one of the issues Apple faces that people aren't really upgrading as much as they used to? Is it? I mean, is the burden on Apple to put something in every new phone that makes even the previous year's phone owners say, "Oh, I really want that"?
Well, I don't think that's the burden. I think the cycle has really widened, right? So it's going to be most people, maybe not people who watch this show, but most people don't buy a new phone every year or every 2 years. It's like 3 years or 4 years. As the smartphone matures, that gets wider and wider. So it's incumbent on Apple to keep iterating and keep improving. But they are, I think, selling for somebody who's got a 3-year-old phone and a 4-year-old phone. And you know, there is some degree of like 1 or 2 year old phones where they're doing a return and then they're reselling that phone on, because their goal is to keep expanding the install base. But realistically, you know, when you're buying, most people who buy the brand new phone are going to be people who are buying it not just for this year's features, but also for that last year's features and probably the years before features. And it's always important to keep that in mind. Like, it's really like, so you've got an iPhone 11 and you want a new iPhone. Here's all the things you're going to get. And then you have to detail 12 and 13 and 14 and 15. And what are all the features of all of those in order to do it? Because it's just, it's very rare that somebody, unless you're on an annual plan, in which case you're locked in, you're buying one regardless of what's in it. it's all about that cumulative effect because the cycle's way longer than it used to be.
Yeah. And I don't think it's terribly unlike the way that automakers have to keep tweaking the design of an established car year after year after year. They have to make sure that they know that there are very few car buyers that are going to be trading in a car every single year. But the thing is, if they get to 50, 60, 70,000 miles, they want to trade in for a new model and they're good enough customers, they want the new version of this, you'd better not be giving them the exact same body style. You'd better not be giving them the same interior because these things actually matter when it comes into keeping people excited about your brand. So, and it's not as though Apple is going to do nothing but, hey, look, our chamfered edges are a little bit rounder this year. Isn't that exciting? But the people who coming in after another 2 or 3 years have to absolutely think that this is a fresh, brand new phone, as opposed to, hey, I'm just going to go to Best Buy and just get something used.
And that comes down really to the camera for the most part, right? I don't even think the fact that it's got a 3 nanometer processor in it, which the higher end ones will be the kind of thing that anybody will know in the real world except us, right? It's the camera. And the periscope is the biggest. That gives us what, a super zoom. Like, I mean, I have that on my Samsung S23 Ultra. That's a 200x digital, a 10x optical zoom. That's the periscope.
Yeah, that's a game changer. When you can extend the range of the optical zoom, that's when you start using this thing as a real camera as opposed to a feature of your phone. And so it's a long time coming. I wouldn't necessarily say that Apple has been behind Samsung and Google in terms of their phone hardware, but you can really see the difference when if you spend a couple of weeks using the latest iPhone and then spend a couple of weeks using the latest flagship phone from Samsung or Google. Gee, why is it that like this new phone's cameras are so much clearer and so much sharper, and I don't have to use crappy like digital zoom effects. It's actually shooting better videos, it's shooting better everything because clever computational tricks are wonderful and they're an important part of mobile photography, but you start off with how good of an optical process are you getting, and you can't really trump anybody who's got better optics and a better sensor than you've got.
I actually can't wait. There were some rumors about the iPhone 16 because why not talk about the iPhone 16 when the 15 is just now getting launched? But the rumor was that the ultra wide lens would get 48 megapixels. And that's going to be exciting for the macro photography, which already is amazing, on the 14 Pro. But I think that'll be pretty cool next year when we talk about the iPhone 16.
Yeah. And those are the cool things. We're seeing like astrophotography, which was not possible a generation ago. Really great macro photography, which was not possible like a generation ago. That's the sort of stuff that keeps you like loyal to a phone maker. If they give you everything, you can use all the same apps, all the same user interface. You got the dynamic island that you liked so much in the last phone, but now, oh my God, this does things this does things for the photography that I could not possibly even think about doing for the past 2.5 years since I've had this older phone. That's what keeps you into that ecosystem.
I've shown this before, so forgive me if you're bored, but one more time. This is the S23 Ultra periscope lens. This is just with the regular lens and slowly zooming in. Note those two people in the middle at the distance. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more on them. At some point, it's going to go, I think this is still optical. At some point, it's going to go digital. Maybe that might be digital. It's pretty good digital. I'm getting closer, and that's clearly digital because it's not, the quality's not very good. But boy, that is a huge zoom, and you can see how people might get. And by the way, the image quality is very, very good. I mean, they also use the Sony sensors, I believe. So,
I mean, that's plenty good for social media. It's plenty good for sending a text to somebody.
It's incredible.
And when you're at half that distance, now you're still good enough for an 8x10 for the sofa table.
We also, this is not going to send people to the stores, but they're going to replace the stainless steel with, what did they say? Titanium. That's because it's lighter. That's the biggest deal of that, though. I kind of like the stainless, the surgical steel shininess. Titanium won't be.
It's fingerprinty though. It's too fingerprinty.
I guess I keep it. So I don't really know.
Titanium is anodizable, so it'll be an anodized titanium, presumably at whatever their colors are. The rumors for the colors are super boring. It's like gray, darker gray, lighter gray,
4 grays,
and blue, but really a gray blue.
Is this,
so real boring.
Now this may be a fake. I don't know. This is about the time we'd get real images because they, as you said, as Ming-Chi Kuo said, they're shipping them. They're putting them in pallets and putting them on container ships right now, or maybe 747s. This is a image from, a rumor image with showing the Type-C connector and a greenish blue, gray blue, maybe.
Yeah, that's the iPhone 15 though, right? Those are going to have to be in brighter colors than the Pro models. The Pro models are going to be the ones where it's sort of like silver, gray, black,
they're Pro.
And dark blue.
They're Pro, yeah.
Yeah, they're Pro. We want them to be as boring as possible.
Yeah, so this is the green of the iPhone 15. Not of,
which I'm still bitter because green is my favorite color, and the one Pro model that had green was launched mid-year. And so if you had bought the iPhone, I think it was the 13 Pro on launch day, you couldn't get the green, unfortunately. So,
green is pretty. Green is pretty. I know Micah wants green.
It's a good color.
Yeah. Is that the kind of more... No, this is also the 15 because I could see that from the camera configuration. So I don't know. Is this real or a mock-up? We don't know. It's just it's a rumor.
Yeah, there's someone tweeted a stack of components that were purportedly USB-C connectors for the upcoming iPhones and all the different colorways.
There's a green, a blue, cables black. Too. Yeah, somebody was saying, maybe those braided cables really go to a MacBook, but because we do get braided cables with our MacBooks. Those are nice. Those are pretty.
But this is like 2 weeks before the announcement. This is when they have to let in a whole bunch of people into the secret that they wouldn't have trusted 3 days earlier than that. Right. So who knows? And the other thing is, we are going to know for sure.
We're going to find out in 2 weeks. So just relax, okay? Just relax.
Yeah, and I know, I'm with you, Stephen. It's like I appreciate the fact that people who want like a phone in an alarming color, they can buy a $20 case and get it in the wackiest colors they want. That's not the purpose of the people who are designing the phone color itself. But I would just love to see just one freak color and the colorway, just one, not just sort of a yellow, but just how yellow can we make a phone that much yellow plus 2 more notches up.
I took my family recently to Washington, D.C., and they have an exhibit in the National Museum of Natural History of phone parts, the raw materials that make up a phone. And they had this glass case in the exhibit of old phones, including flip phones, Blackberries, and a few iPhones, including the iPhone 5C. They have the white 5C and the green. And my 14-year-old son was like, these iPhones look amazing. What are these? And I said, those are the old ones that were plastic, but they were cool colors. People liked it.
Yeah.
I like the people who take their old phone and take it apart and make an exploded image of it. I would like. Here's a 4S exploded image. Let me go to the website.
In the case of the battery, sometimes literally.
This is the iPhone 4. This is
you've got one. Look at that
Grid Studio. Yeah, this is the iPhone 4. It was my first iPhone, so that's why I wanted this.
Did you send it to them and they exploded it for you, or?
No, you just buy it and they just send it to you.
Oh, okay.
They have it all exploded. I also have behind me. I can hold on one second. I'll get it. I have the chips. They have now all the chips. These are the Apple A4 to the A13. Of course, you cannot see the camera's no way is going to focus on this.
That's cool.
All the chips
Look at
that. And a nice little display. And so that's kind of cool.
Well, these are awfully expensive. Here's a 4S, $139. Did they have Liam take it apart, I wonder, or this is really cool.
They do have occasionally they have original iPhones, and they actually have some iPods, which for whatever reason, I just bought an iPod video on eBay 2 days ago, just because I just wanted it.
An exploded one or a normal one?
Supposedly a working one. Okay. So we will find out 2 days when it arrives whether or not it actually works.
They're lovely objects. I mean, they're things like I had to buy one of the dumbest things I bought electronically is an actual like Google Nexus Q, which is the streaming their first streaming device.
Did that ever ship?
No, as a matter of fact, everybody who pre-ordered one, like it was who if their pre-order was accepted, at some point Google said, you know what, we're refunding your money, and when you receive it, you can keep it. We just want to forget this ever happened. And I can get these, like if you're patient, like in the box for about $30. Wow. And it's just an interesting object. And when you plug it in, there's like a little LED, there's like a ring of LEDs that light up. And yeah, this is why like I can't get into collecting like old Apple IIs and like old Macs, because at some point it's like, wow, those are really, really big, and I've got not a whole lot of room, and leaky capacitors and traces that die, and then you have to figure out why they're not working. Whereas when you buy like a really cool iPod Shuffle, and it's just you put this in a line with all the other little iPods, and someone is saying that thing that is not clear, that is clearly not an iPod. Oh yes, the thing that's the size of a stick of dentine gum. Oh yes, that was back before Bluetooth streaming was a thing, back before the Apple Watch was a thing. Apple had to contend with fitness people by giving them the tiniest iPod that could ever exist. One that could be fitted nasally if so desired. And you could.
I can see
I've been trying to decide what to keep, and I still have my original iPod Touch box with the John Lennon on the front. This is one of my, and I still have, it still turns on the iPod Touch and everything, but you eventually have to choose, what do I keep after years, and what do I let take up so much room? So
I could see why they killed this, because there's fingerprints all over it's kind of not such a good look, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I had to kind of wipe mine off for a little bit. I use it. I actually use it as
headphone.
It's actually doing service for me. I actually use it as a headphone stand. Like on my
I'll
desk.
give this back to Jason Howell, and he can use it for a headphone stand.
Like
this is his. I didn't know he had one.
Stand.
Jason, did you buy this, or did Google might have sent this to him as like before they realized they weren't going to sell them? Yeah,
it's also for New Englanders. It reminds us of Candlepin bowling. So no matter where we roam,
it does. It looks like a candlepin ball.
Proper bowling where you play the wood where it lays. You get 3 tries.
Yeah, candlepin. I remember that.
And the high-low jackpot ends every Saturday morning bowling show.
All right, let's take a break. We've got Stephen. Are you going to the Apple event?
No, I'll be tuning in from Florida.
Okay.
Hurricane. That's what I'll be doing.
You and the hurricane will be watching.
That's it.
Andy, you're going to be in New England. I'm going to be in New England. Maybe we can get together. Maybe go to a diner and cover the Apple event together. That'd be fun.
If nothing else, I'll come over and bring you some iced lemonade.
Adele's lemonade would be very nice.
Lemonade. There you go.
I would like Adele's lemonade, and if you would, some Eclipse coffee milk. And we'll be very, very happy.
One last question about the event specifically. With the rise of Threads and Mastodon, this is kind of the first big Apple event where Threads is a thing and X is over here. Where are people going to be talking about the event live as it happens? Because it feels like Threads is still not great for that live interaction as it happens.
So I've been looking for the invitation, right? Found plenty of them on Twitter. Went to Threads, not one image of the invitation, not even one mention of it. So Threads, I don't think so. Went to Blue Sky, nope. I think it's going to have to stay at X because for whatever reason, Jason, did you post your invitation anywhere?
I haven't, no. And I don't know where I would put it at this point, to Stephen's point. Like,
yeah, where would you put it?
It's everywhere too. I just sometimes I think all the breathless, like, oh, Apple did an invitation for an event thing. It's not. It's just. I'm
looking at Threads,
and we all know that it's
happening. I don't see even a mention of an Apple event. It's like these are real people.
Well, I posted it, but during the event, like at WWDC this past June, I tried to run. Back then it was Twitter and Mastodon side by side, and Mastodon just couldn't handle it.
Oh,
I tried to upload pictures quickly, but it seems like X is still the only one that is made.
Here's
for
from
that,
Here's Nilay Patel, Reckless, Joanna Stern. Oh, so Nilay got the RSVP, right? Joanna has cut off the bottom, so we don't know. She got invited, I think, right? But why would she? She cut off the bottom. She didn't want anybody to know what invitation she got. So those are the two. And you said you posted it too. Oh, there's Carolina. Carolina, by the way, Milanese, not only is going to the Steve Jobs Theater, she gets invited. I don't know how. She's also going to the Surface event 2 weeks later in New York City. She got invited to that, too. Please note, invitations are not transferable.
She's on the analyst list.
She's an analyst. I guess podcasters don't count. Marquez Brownlee, join us in person. This is a subtle little way of saying who you are in the world when you put the bottom part on. Join us in person or see it online. So there are a few people. I guess I didn't go deep enough. They had moved on by the time I checked Threads. This is Threads.
Which again, I think it speaks to the algorithm. Like Threads is not good at surfacing that stuff as it's happening, or even shortly after. I know Nilay Patel was talking about during that first Republican debate. He went on Threads and really saw nothing related to that event as it was happening. And so again, it seems like for live events, I mean, Threads got to change that algorithm.
Jason decided at the last minute, just now you posted on Threads, Apple's doing an event. Now you know.
There you go, Leo.
Yeah,
did that for you.
Thank you, just for me. Jason posted that.
I guess it depends on you have to use your experience in this industry to think for yourself of how big your audience is and how many of them are January 6th truthers and how many of them are interested in the new iPhone.
If you're trying to reach the truthers, I think X is the place.
I think so.
X marks the spot,
welcome,
as they say.
Very warm embrace there.
Yeah. It is. We are. We spend a lot of time on other shows talking about this. Not so much on MacBreak Weekly, but we are kind of bereft. We don't have the Twitter anymore. We don't have that place everyone can go. Twitter's kind of still, hanging on just a little bit.
I still find the most engagement there. I mean, from my audience,
Yeah.
and I had a good amount of followers come over to Threads, but again, it's just not really for that. It was exciting for a couple of weeks, and then everyone just kind of was like got bored with it. I think the algorithm wasn't surfacing what people wanted to see fast enough, and either they went back to X or just nothing. And so, but I still find engagement there on X.
Interesting. So Steven's in Florida. Andy is in Rhode Island. I'm in Rhode Island. But we know where you'll be, Jason Snell. Cupertino, California, September 12th. Those are the assassination coordinates if you're following along at home. Will you be taking the jet or probably just driving down? You could probably segue
ride
over.
my bike, whatever.
Yeah. The famous Six Colors jet in the Six Colors livery.
Oh, that's a pretty jet. Oh, that's so pretty. You can't miss it when you see it, down there at San Jose Airport. When you see that there, man,
Got to embrace the branding.
Yeah.
The flight attendants and their signature jeans and black mock turtlenecks.
And it's all made of fine Corinthian leather. Our show today brought to you by ACI Learning. We love our friends at ACI Learning. You know the name IT Pro as one of our trusted sponsors for the last decade. We love IT Pro. Well, as part of ACI Learning, IT Pro has elevated their highly entertaining, bingeable, short-form content with over 7,200 hours to choose from and new episodes added every day. ACI Learning's personal account managers will be with you every step of the way. Fortify your expertise with access to self-paced training videos for IT, interactive practice labs, certification practice tests. One user shares, quote, excellent resource, not just for theory, but labs incorporated within the subscription. It's fantastic. Highly recommend the resource and top-class instructors. Don't miss ACI Learning's practice labs, where you can test and experiment before deploying new apps or updates without compromising your live system. MSPs love that. And I love the practice exams. You can take and retake the practice IT cert tests. That way you'll be confident when you sit for the actual exam. ACI Learning brings you IT practice exam questions from Microsoft, CompTIA, EC Council, PMI, and many more. Access every vendor and skill you need to advance your IT career in one place. ACI Learning is the only official video training for CompTIA. Or check out their Microsoft IT training, their Cisco training, Linux training, Apple training, security, cloud, and more. Coming up next month, you can join ACI Learning September 26th and 27th. They'll be in London at the International Cybersecurity and Cloud Expo to experience the latest innovations and cutting-edge technologies. Learn IT, pass your certs, get your dream job, or if you're ready, bring your group along. Head over to our special link and fill out the form for your team. Twit listeners receive at least 20% off an IT Pro Enterprise solution and can reach up to 65% for volume discounts, depending on the number of seats you need. Learn more about ACI Learning's premium training options across audit, IT, and cybersecurity readiness. Visit go.acilearning.com/twit. For individuals, use the code TWIT30 for 30% of a standard or premium individual IT Pro membership. That's go.acilearning.com/twit. We thank ACI Learning for supporting MacBreak Weekly. Well, we just shot our news wad. There's nothing more to say. I'm excited. So actually, I didn't ask. How many of you will I guess we're the wrong people because we kind of have to buy an iPhone.
Yes,
15,
everybody.
right?
We're all going to upgrade.
You're going to get the Max, Pro Max, Super Duper, $1,200, $1,400 dynamic island window version.
I struggle because I've not been Pro Max since like the 7 Plus. I prefer the smaller size phone, and I just have angst whenever there's a better camera in the Pro Max. But this year, my 14 Pro struggled with battery life, and so I'm considering the 15 Pro Max for that battery if it's a better camera. But I don't prefer it. I like the smaller size, so we'll see.
And the Mini's gone, right? They're just
it's gone. I'm a Mini user, and I'm on a 2-year cycle, so I have to actually choose what I'm going to do for my own purchase phone, and it's probably going to be the Pro. I don't like the big phone at all, so it would probably be the Pro though. Depending on what the specs are with that camera and the screen, and if I can get by with the fewer cameras but still have the dynamic island, maybe I would go to the cheaper model. And it's also my wife's phone buying cycle right now. She's been holding on, so she's going to get a fresh new iPhone 15, I think, too. So it's going to be an expensive fall again. What else is new?
Super cycle.
Yeah, we do an assembly line because the phones get handed down. So Lisa and I get the new phone and we hand down actually, it's interesting.
Nobody wants my Mini though, so now I have to buy 2 phones. So I knew this day would come.
This day has come.
No one wants my Mini.
Our 20-year-old who I'm sorry, that's a rude thing to say, who is now working at Safeway, didn't finally get a job. He was working at Safeway. Good union job. And he wanted to buy the iPhone 14 Pro Max like the day he got the job. And Lisa and I said, no. There will be an iPhone 15. So I think he'll be in the market. So maybe the hand-me-down chain has finally been broken. But I think I'll get the Pro Max. Of course I will.
Yeah.
I will. Yeah. In
but
gray.
Of course, that shows how well the system works.
It does.
That it's like, okay, kid, you can either have like my hand-me-down 2-year-old or 3-year-old iPhone, or I can buy you a brand new 2023 Android phone. Like, oh God, no. Green bubbles, no. I'd rather have the old one.
Yeah, I subverted this by just doing the iPhone upgrade program. So I just tell my kids, my phone's going away. I send it back to Apple and then I get the other one. So sorry. No upgrade.
All right. Well, we just made Apple a few $1,000 right here, just in this panel. It's amazing how they do that. And plus all new Type-C cables for everyone.
Yes.
I have a drawer full of Lightning cables, although that's a smaller drawer than the double-sized drawer full of Type-C cables. There's a lot of those in the house.
The only time I use that USB-C to Lightning is for fast charging, which we were at Podcast Movement last week, and I did use fast charging then because it is useful.
Nice.
It is very nice. But I welcome our USB-C overlords, and I'm good to let Lightning go.
And Andy, you're going to get the Samsung Galaxy Flip Z Ultra, right?
I don't know.
iPhone for you.
Well, not yet. My Pixel 6 Pro is still bipping along nice. I might be eligible for a new phone, meaning like my interior accountant might allow me to buy a new phone like next year or the year after that. And as usual, and as always, switching to an iPhone is going to be absolutely in the cards. If they do something that is more exciting and more valuable to me than whatever the latest Pixel phone is. But for now, I mean, I'm the most important feature. The 2 most important features for me on a phone happen to be storage, so I can put whatever media I want on this and whatever apps I want and not have to care, and camera. And now that Adobe Lightroom mobile is so freaking good, it's like I still think the Pixel's cameras are at least as good as anything that Apple's doing. But then when you throw in like on either platform, however good the phone is, the phone's camera is, the ability to drop it into Lightroom and then 30 seconds later have it tweaked exactly the way you like it, and so good that you can then say, hey, I think I'll enter that in that photo competition that I just read about last week. it really, for me, it upended a lot of the thought process of buying a phone. It used to be best camera wins. Now it's like, no, so long as all three Samsung,
they're all pretty close, aren't
Apple,
they?
yeah. Although I will say Samsung is always out of the running, because every time that I test out a Samsung phone, it's like, how many Samsung accounts do I have to sign up for to just use this damn phone? It's like, oh, well, you need a Samsung account to, okay.
So frustrating.
You need Samsung account if you're going to get updates. Okay. And then you need another Samsung account if you're going to use like the fitness stuff. Okay. Now you need Samsung Music and Samsung, like, okay, what if I just don't ever deal with you ever again? Because Google's already got its hooks into me, so I don't think I'm losing anything with the Pixel. I trust Apple, so I'm not losing anything by going with Apple. If I were to get Samsung out of my life, I think I could proceed forward on a very, very even keel.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I wish Apple would make a good folding phone though. I
love the Flip. I bought the Flip 5, and I'm the newest Flip is really great. I really love it. It's tiny, it's pocketable. It's just really cool. It's cute.
I mean, I can't afford $1,800 for a phone of any kind.
Oh, I know.
Much less a screen that. It's part of the marketing for that is that it's not just for people who can afford an $1,800 phone. It's for people who can, like, a year and 2 months after they buy it, see like a really bad scratch on it, or see some sort of wrinkle in the hinge part of it, of the screen, and not really care about it. And because, hey, I'll just buy a new one, or I'll just get the screen replaced. It's like I'm a 5-year person when it comes to a phone. Ideally, that I can sit out for 5 years if necessary, and if I possibly can, because I don't have $1,200 a year to spend on an iPhone subscription. So I try to get as much use out of these things as I can.
Yeah, I don't look forward to retiring and having to actually think before I buy
yeah, I see.
It's not going to be fun. I don't want to make that calculus.
It's like that joke in Police Squad where Frank Drebin, like Leslie Nielsen, gets like fired off the police force. Say, just think, the next time I shoot somebody, I could even be arrested for this. It's like, just think. The next time I want to buy a camera, I might not be able to try every single one I'm interested in for 60 days for absolutely for free. It's a world gone mad.
Sunday, we had the great Jason Kebler on. He, of course, was editor-in-chief of Motherboard at Vice for a long time. Vice has had some financial difficulties. He and 3 of his other superstar reporters have formed their own little company called 404 Media at 404media.co. But Jason, we'd actually talked to him some years ago, has always been a right to repair. I don't know if advocate's right, because he's a reporter, but he's always covered that right to repair story from 404media.co. We're winning, in quotes. Apple formally endorses the right to repair legislation after spending millions fighting it. He got access to a letter to lobbyists. Actually, it was a letter to Senator Eggman, if that's his real name. No, her name is Susan. Kookookachu. Susan Eggman, the sponsor of the bill. Apple writes in support of SB 244 and urges members of the California legislature to pass the bill as currently drafted. We support SB 244, Apple goes on to say, because it includes requirements that protect individual users' safety and security. This was one of Apple's concerns was, well, if you repair yourself, what happens to the locked enclave and so forth, as well as the product manufacturer's intellectual property. Will continue to support the bill so long as it continues to provide protections for customers and innovators. I guess Apple finally found, is it that Apple finally found a bill they could support, or they finally saw the writing on the wall and said, all right,
well, can it be both?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I feel like that's what's going on here. I wonder if behind the scenes there was some talk of like people were either hesitant to vote on it who are very pro business and were like, I'm not going to be, Apple's not going to like this, and so I don't like it. And then the authors of the bill are like, let's reassure you that Apple's okay with it. Or if somebody was trying to amend it to do something that Apple didn't like, and so Apple decided to have this moment to swoop in and say, no, this is the law we like. Do this. This is the one we like. I think they know that this sort of thing is coming. In fact, they've built a whole infrastructure with their repair programs to support it. I think the last thing they want is legislation that breaks some part of the process they've already set in place. So something probably prompted this letter to be put in the record, right? Like
Yeah.
a threat from somewhere or somebody who needed to be reassured that Apple was okay with it as it was written.
Well, they may have seen the writing on the wall. It passed in the Senate, the California Senate, 38-0. So, but the Assembly still has to vote. With Apple's support, it probably will pass. And as a number of people have pointed out, if as California goes, so goes the nation. Even though there was a bill in New York that was kind of stripped of most of its, guts last year, this is going to be it. This means ultimately a total victory for right to repair.
Yeah, and also the writing was on the wall internationally in the EU and elsewhere. So if they were going to have to keep iPhone parts in stock and available for people to repair for the EU anyway, it behooves them to say, well, okay, if we're going to have to maintain that new part of our business, that part of our organization, keeping track and inventorying and maintaining stockpiles of repair parts for third parties, we may as well. It kind of changes the calculus, and the California law isn't that draconian. It basically just says that Apple, for their part, like for iPhones, they would have to maintain a supply of spare parts for iPhones available to third parties for 3 years after they stop making them. I think 3 years. And that's not that hard. They've also seen how well these programs have worked for other companies working through iFixit, that they don't even necessarily have to deal with these third parties directly. I think that it was as you say, it was a combination of them having lots and lots of conversations to make sure that they feel as though they've been heard by legislators, seeing that this is not something that they can fight, so they can at least maintain a presence, a seat at the table and dictate, and being consulted about how this works. And also realizing that the world is not going to end because we are going to make screens and other kind of sensors available. It's the question is always going to be, though, how are they going to control access to software that if you still have to code each one of these components before they get installed and before they'll be admitted into the secure enclave of the device? That remains to be seen, but that seems to be something that they're going to have to do underneath this California law anyway. But yeah, this is they had to do this at some point. It's the USB-C of legislation, and they were kind of foolish to fight it so hard for so long as they did.
The law says manufacturers will, quote, have to make available on fair and reasonable terms to product owners, service and repair facilities, and service dealers the means as described to effect the diagnosis, maintenance, or repair of the product. They have to make the same diagnostics tools and parts available to the public as they make available to authorized repair professionals. Apple says some of the things that we really wanted, I think Apple did see the writing on the wall, but at the same time, they can save a little face by saying, well, we got the assurances we wanted that the bill would not threaten consumer safety and data security by requiring manufacturers allow repair providers to disable device security features, many of which have been requested by law enforcement agencies and required by law to thwart theft, that they also will require that repair providers disclose the use of non-genuine or used parts. I think that's good. I think it's a win all round as finally something good.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, how many times have we joked about like Apple always couching like their bad behavior in terms of we've listened to you, the consumer, and you're welcome. Like we congratulations, consumers. We just won a great victory on your behalf. We were not going to support this law until your security and privacy were being protected. And thanks to us, your friends, your two wacky hippies in the garage with $2.3 trillion in valuation decided to make this all happen. And also when you read it out, realize that this is also the kind of weasel words that any large company likes to see. If they can comply with this law in a way that they think will work for them. And if the consumers and EFF and other organizations say, well, actually, no, you're not complying with this law at all, then congratulations. Now we're off to 2, 3, 4 years of litigation that will lead to a settlement, as opposed to, no, here is a line that you failed to. No, we felt as though our solution was very, very reasonable and very, very practical and did extend the right to repair to people. You disagree, but we will simply argue this out in court until an agency says, look, we're sick of fighting this. Give us a couple $100,000 and some free iPads for schools, and let's just go home.
A nice victory, by the way, for Kyle Wiens and iFixit.com. They've really been advocates. They created the Right to Repair website. Also to CalPERG, the Public Interest Research Group. They've been very strongly in favor of the right to repair. And there in the middle, in the green raincoat, is Senator Eggman, Kookookachu. Thank you, Senator. I just wanted to say Kookookachu again. Thank you, Senator Eggman, for sponsoring that. Yeah. I think this is good for everybody. It's good for everybody.
iFixit is one of those rare companies that proves that you can have a profitable for-profit business that nonetheless is working in the public interest. Yeah. It's not, there's no BS behind that. That they are working for rights that will direct business to their site, but also to everybody else, and give everybody a fairer shake than they're getting right now. So that's one place where, okay, capitalism, we'll give you another 5 years at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Yay. 5 years. That's it, though. On the outside.
Then Red Banner Revolution's going right up. I got it in the closet. It's still on the pole. It's still on the pole. I'm telling you.
Apple, we've mentioned this before, but I think it's official, is buying TSMC's entire supply of 3 nanometer chips for the year. Every one of them, says DigiTimes. We knew that they'd booked most of them. Well, now Apple's projected to take 100% of their capacity. And that's partly because Intel delays in Intel's wafer needs are part of the problem, I guess. Intel's lack of orders, they're really not there yet. So Apple said, well, we'll take that 10% Intel doesn't want. We'll take them all. How many more can you give us?
Yeah.
So that's good.
They've been investing heavily in this technology too. So it's not as though it's their technology, but it's not as though they're scooping. It's not as though they're just like, scooping up every ticket to the concert so that no one can see it unless it's on their terms. Yeah. So yeah, this is cool. This is what Apple does so very, very well. It's sensing what their need is going to be and making sure that they will be able to fulfill that need. That's why Apple's one of the few companies that weren't affected as hard by part shortages in the past few years as almost every other company was, because they had already secured procurement for every component they're going to need for the next 5 years.
Which I do wonder, Mark Gurman said there's going to be an October event as well this year. If we could see an M3 or a 3 nanometer process, maybe in an iMac, which is still running the M1. That thing's been around for a couple of years now. So it's possible we see it in a couple months.
I would love to see that. There was somebody put this article in, thank you, from 512pixels.net, the case for and against Apple shipping a larger iMac. We've talked about this before. The current 21 inch or 24?
24 inch.
24 inch.
24 inch
is so small that it's really for, consumers, not for prosumers. And I kind of miss the larger one. And there have been strong rumors that Apple is going to do 30-inch plus probably next year, not this year. You think maybe, what do you think they'll announce, Stephen, in October? There's certainly new iPads. But do you think they'll have an M3 something?
Well, I wonder if it'll be iPads. They'll probably be the base model iPad, the 11th generation, because Gurman also said next year they're going to revamp the Pro models. Right. So I think maybe base model iPad. I would love to see an iPad mini with maybe ProMotion. Yeah. That's a wish list item, but I would just love a mini with ProMotion. But I do think the iMac is one of the longest in the tooth. And if we do see maybe, I don't know if they'll update the MacBook Pro. We just have the M2 Pro and M2 Max over the summer with the MacBook Pros. So maybe it's just an iPad, iMac, and possibly some accessories. Maybe updated AirPods then, although it'd be strange to wait for that if USB-C is coming in September. So I think mostly iMac and then a base model iPad with something else, which I'm not sure, for October.
Your colleague Dan Morin has an article in Macworld. Has Apple's oldest Mac overstayed its welcome, Jason? After 25 years and numerous reinventions, Apple needs to figure out where the iMac stands in the desktop lineup. We kind of talked about this last week.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the thinking of the 25th anniversary of the iMac, sort of where does it go now?
Yeah.
And what Dan and what Stephen Hackett, right in their pieces is very much like, desktops aren't what they were, but they're still important to have. The question is, are they so important to have that you have 2 different iMac models or not? Mark Gurman has said that they're working, but it's clearly not a high priority. I wonder if it's going to be like that 15-inch MacBook Air, where they will sort of do one eventually, but it's not going to be on the same cycle as the revision of the 24-inch model to the M3, which we probably will see this fall. I wonder when the way it's gone, the base model chip is what we see first. So if you see an M3, then that's a thing that they could put in an iPad Air, they could put it in an iPad Pro, but it could go in a Mac Mini, but they've got the Pro chip now, so maybe not there. What's another product they have that only has the base model chip? It's the MacBook Air. Could it be that the MacBook Air would get its revision this fall as well? Because they probably won't have an M3 Pro, right, this fall. So the only Macs that they would be releasing this fall would be the ones that only come in the base model. So that's the 24. And I love the 24-inch iMac to have a Pro chip option too. But again, if it's coming this fall, I just don't see it.
I always thought I would get an iMac as a family computer. I have 3 kids, and it always in my mind was going to be the ideal machine. But even to this point, I have not had a reason to get it. My kids have iPads, and actually that suffices. Now that Logic Pro 10 is on the iPad, like that was the one thing I would have gotten a Mac for. And even my oldest son, who is making music, is just using Logic Pro 10 on his iPad. And so as a family computer device, I don't know if that age has maybe passed, but I do think there's a place, especially like doctor's offices or like administrative types use cases, where I do see iMacs all the time. Typically they're older iMacs because they just stay around forever. But I do think eventually, if it dies or, new offices open up, there's still some use cases like point of sale systems, maybe, although that's gone iPad too. But for me as myself, I do not see a personal need for an iMac anymore, which is kind of sad. I love that computer.
Yeah, I mean, it's so personable, and we were talking earlier about how wanting to have really, really cool colors. The iMac is the most colorific line that Apple makes. It really is quite joyful, all the range of bright, wonderful colors that they have. But it's hard to see a need specifically that the iMac fills really, really well, because at that doctor's office, they've probably got some sort of record system that is probably based on Windows. And plus, they probably want to, instead of spending whatever Apple tax is for this really cool, pretty looking iMac, they'd much rather just get whatever Dell screen they've already got in the storeroom, and whatever like little mini Windows 11 box can actually run it. Ditto for anybody who's buying lots of multiples of these devices. If you're buying multiples of them, then you're not buying the person who's going to be using them day in and day out is not making the purchasing decision. It's the person who's doing the budgets, and whoever shows up at the office or at their schoolroom and finds this thing on their desk, congratulations, you are now a Windows user, or you are now a user of whatever that is. One of the things that I'm still kind of on the fence about is, I wonder if Apple's going to try to phase out the M1 on desktops. If they're going to at some point say that the difference between the M1 and the M2 is such that we want to make sure that now that we've put an M1 in every single portable Mac and desktop Mac, now's the time to, the next big upgrades for all of those are going to be making sure that the least sophisticated Apple silicon is going to be M2 across the board. Like, does anybody think that that's something that Apple would like to do, or is it the M1 is still plenty powerful as it is, and they can always increase the speed of that chip and keep the same architecture, but there's something about saying, oh, by the way, we've upgraded the new MacBook Air, same price, and we've upgraded everybody to a new M2 chip.
It's the Cook doctrine, as they call it, right? Which is, do they benefit from having that moment of old product on price list that's cheap and profitable? And the M1 Air does have to go away at some point, right? But it's the old body. It's presumably a lot cheaper to make than the M2 Air body is. So I don't know. I feel like the M1 will be around for a little while, longer than old Macs who have been replaced have ever been before, if that makes any sense, right? Just that it has been so long, but it's still so good, and it lets them sell that MacBook Air at such a low price that, it's worth doing. I wonder if the M2 will go away and the M1 will stay when they do the M3 Air. I really do wonder, because they have they've done stuff like that in the past where they've sort of kept the interim or kept the old model around just to hit a price point, and then they keep updating the interim model. But I would be happy if the M1s went away. The question is, can they make the M2s cheap enough that they can hit their price points, right?
Yeah. I mean, the only big roadblock of the M1, I mean, it's fast enough, but it's a bummer that you're always going to be stuck with just 2 displays. It's like, because if you're trying to get 5 or 10 years out of a Mac Mini or out of a MacBook, there's going to be at least a period or a project where you're going to say, "Oh God, I really wish I want 2 displays, but I don't want one of the displays to be the built-in MacBook display." And no, you can't do that because M1 is stuck with that, or it's also stuck with high-speed lanes for Thunderbolt.
And M2 had that limitation, right? They both had that limitation, which I hope that M3 finally addresses, because it's surprising how many people buy a laptop and expect to connect 2 monitors to it. I think Apple initially just decided, oh, that's an Intel feature. Nobody actually uses it. We don't need to build it into the M1. And over the last couple of years, I think maybe they've realized that there are more people agitating for that than they accounted for.
We can give you an additional display for your MacBook. It's called an iPad Pro. Come on in, we'll set you up.
The rumor is that they'll do this would make sense schedule wise, that they might do an M3 13-inch MacBook Pro. It's not really a Pro, but it's called the Pro, right? That they've done that every year ahead of the bigger MacBook Pros.
And the big deal is that the thermals on the silicon are so terrific that like on other silicon it would have been, well, no, of course we unless we want to make this thing that's 3 times as thick as the original PowerBook just to keep all the cooling fans going. It's like we can keep the fans dead for most operations, even with an M3, even in the current chassis design, or at least with very, very little modification. There's a lot of overhead in those systems.
I would say if they do a MacBook Pro 13-inch with an M3 and it still has the touch bar, I don't know.
I know. That's the last. They didn't update the design for that. Maybe now they'll update the design. So the advice I saw again and again, I bought the 13 and then I bought a 14 because I'm an idiot, but was not to buy the 13 when it was the M2 or M1. It
only exists to hit a price point for organizations that don't want to buy something that isn't labeled Pro. So they're like, get us the cheapest MacBook Pro, and Apple doesn't feel they can say, get the 14. That's really good, but it's $2,000. $1,200.
Yeah.
And instead they've got this old computer that is not any more capable. Really, it's got active cooling, but like, it really is not any better than the MacBook Air, but it's called a MacBook Pro. And there are absolutely organizations that will not buy a MacBook Air. They will buy a MacBook Pro. We only buy professional laptops for our users.
Right.
And Apple can't get that 14-inch model down to $1,299, right? It's not even close. So instead, this kind of joke of a Pro laptop just kicks on. And I don't think anybody should buy it, honestly, because you should, if you're going to buy that, buy the MacBook Air. It's a better, designed computer, more modern in so many different ways.
Unless you want the touch bar.
Love the touch bar. Yeah.
This 13-inch MacBook Pro doesn't even have MagSafe charging. So I would say the MacBook Air, you can have two USB-C plus it's charging on MagSafe. This MacBook Pro, it's 2 USB-C ports. That's it. No MagSafe charging.
Yeah, so do you think they'll do? Do you think that's what they'll do in October? That's the MacBook that they'll announce in October?
I wonder if there's a revision coming that is specifically if they decided that they can't keep making this, what they might do is instead of just eliminating it and keeping the 14 and the 16 in the line, I wonder if there's like a decontented 13-inch MacBook Pro that is like, not very interesting, but
they have to do something to keep the cost down
at that price point. Yeah, exactly right. It's sort of like a MacBook Air Pro almost, that it's just enough that they can call it a Pro. Maybe the touch bar is out of there. Maybe there are some more ports, but it's really not. I have a hard time imagining it being like good, but I think that at some point they might need to just do a revision in order to hit a price point, which is, again, how exciting is that to be like, we're making this computer to be $12.99 or whatever it is, right? Because we have to sell something. So it's either that or they just keep running the touch bar model out there again and again, which, I mean, maybe they got extra touch bars they're trying to sell.
I say bring back the 12-inch MacBook. That's what I want. A 12-inch MacBook with an M3.
The corporate users won't buy that one either, though. So
no. It's
There was that reminds me. I mean, I would love like an iPad sized MacBook, even if it was with a Magic Keyboard case, because there's still a use case for me where the iPad is not going to. It's almost something I can use for several days on a trip. I just have to plan not to do the things that it can't do for me. And so this why there was a rumor going around that there's going to be a new redesigned Magic Keyboard case that is more laptop-like of some kind. Again, it's just
this goes with
rumors are rumors. But
this goes with Mark Gurman's assertion that next year will be a revamped iPad Pro with an M3 and an OLED screen and the new Magic Keyboard. That sounds like what you want, actually.
Yeah. And when you if you were to mate that up with better multi-screen support, with that feature that everybody tried for about 10 minutes, but then like didn't use at all. So, a better version of Stage Manager that seems to have taken in a lot of input from people. I mean, is that a 6 colors article about the iPad is still not a laptop.
Yeah.
They're still like, I love it. It is my go-to device for like short trips, but there's still, when you hit that wall, you hit it so freaking hard. It's like, no, there's absolutely not only is there no way to do it, but you feel as though you are in a really badly done like Dungeons and Dragons game where the dungeon master has basically set up this world to make sure you get as angry and frustrated and feel as powerless as possible, saying you would lose nothing if you just let me do this one thing. No, you can't do that. Why? Because that would impede the user experience.
Are you talking about
the user experience right now, Ben?
Are you talking about Jason's article, giving up the iPad-only travel dream?
Yeah. I mean, and what Andy's saying there, I mean, we've always said when you hit the wall, it's brutal with the iPad because there's no flexibility. That's the thing. I have some very unique things that I need for when I travel because I'm a podcaster. But the fact is, and I heard from people who are like, well, other people don't do what you do. And it's like, guys, read the next paragraph, which is the problem is flexibility. If it does what you need, you're good, right? It's great. It's so flexible for you that you can believe it. But like, if you don't want to do anything that Apple hasn't foreseen, you hit the wall. And that's the difference between the iPad and the Mac. If Apple hasn't foreseen it on the Mac, guess what? A third-party app, utility, something has foreseen it, and you can do it yourself, or you can install a utility and you can make it happen. But on the iPad, because of the way it's structured, if Apple hasn't foreseen it, you just can't do it. And so I just decided, I tried very hard to work around all of those issues for a long time. And only when I'm visiting my mom or I'm traveling to other places, like only bring my iPad. And I finally realized, you know what? Apple Silicon, the MacBook Air, it's so good. It's less than 3 pounds in my bag and I can stop fighting. And that's what I decided to do is I just stopped fighting. If I'm going somewhere and need to record a podcast, I just bring the iPad and the MacBook Air and I use the MacBook Air. Sometimes I went to Colorado a few weeks ago and I had to do a podcast when I was there and I pulled the laptop out, recorded one podcast and then put it right back away. Didn't touch it the rest of the trip, but like I couldn't have done that with the iPad. It would have been jumping through hoops. And I just decided like, if Apple's not going to do it, I'm not going to push it. I'm done pushing the envelope for now. Because Apple's pace of iPad innovation is very limited. And I think that they want it to be, it's growing, but it's growing really slowly. And the fact is, as we've talked about here many times, Apple Silicon Macs are really good. So maybe I should just
talk in your article about
up.
the specialty stuff you use, like the Audio Hijack or Stream Deck, that you carry with you. But I think if we were to generalize it, it's really that you cannot install arbitrary drivers on the iPad. like you can on a computer.
And background utilities, right? That can capture your keyboard at any point. Like there's so many useful Mac utilities that slightly modify the interface. Or
I would call them all drivers. And I understand the reason Apple doesn't allow third-party drivers on that, because that is also a notorious source of bugs, security issues, and problems for users. And so Apple probably in their head is saying the same thing you just did, Jason, which is, well, if you need that, take a MacBook Air. That's why we make it. And and if you want kind of something that's simple, secure, installing drivers is the number one hassle on Windows computers. It's a source of all sorts of trouble. And I can see why they wouldn't want to do that. Go ahead.
It's tough for me because, like, when we went to the podcast movement last week, I sit here and have an existential crisis every time I'm packing because I have an iPad Mini, iPad Pro, MacBook Pro. Which of these devices do I take? And for me, I actually edit multiple podcasts a week on my iPad Mini.
No,
because it's so light.
What?
I can sit out on the patio.
What do you use?
And I edit Ferrite.
Ferrite. People love Ferrite. Yeah.
And it is just amazing. I can edit faster with the Apple Pencil on iPad than any other. And I have Logic Pro. I have it all. But when I was at this conference, I had to record a podcast. I did it with Micah Sargent. And it was this moment where we were using like all this B&H photo equipment, and we ended up using this Zoom track recorder that had an SD card. And in that moment, if I didn't have my MacBook Pro 14-inch and I didn't bring any dongles, like I would be up a creek. And so even just for that, like a 14-inch MacBook Pro, I'll probably never run into a situation where I'll be stuck, as opposed to the iPad. Like if I just had my iPad Pro, even with a dongle, I don't know if I could have recorded. I could record in Ferrite, but I don't know about Jason's experience. Like I don't trust multi-track recording into Ferrite, not because of Ferrite's limitations, but just it's with the iPad and like I can't see, I can't monitor enough of what's happening in real time to really just trust it while I'm recording.
You hit the sweet spot though, by the way. This would be my sweet spot too, as a MacBook Pro 14-inch and a iPad Mini. That's a really nice combination that's not much heavier.
The Mini is the hidden superstar of the entire Apple lineup.
Yes.
It is. I really honestly think that as someone who already has an iPad Pro that he spent a lot of money on, I didn't get the cheap one. I had money set aside so that I could get like as much storage as I wanted, the M1, everything, and the pencil. I still every time that I get out my old iPad, the one that is basically made out of animal skins and twigs at this point, compared to what's available now. That's going to be my next Apple purchase, maybe even before like my new Mac Mini, because it puts such a role in my life. But Stephen, like we're talking about, you not being able to install drivers, and that is a big deal. But like for me, like just the simplicity of, I have a file. I want to move. I want to move the file from here to there. Like, okay, that's easy. Just use cloud. I'm in the middle of nowhere, but I have everything I need. I just needed to move it from this place to this place. Can't do it. Okay, well, how about if I have like a JPEG file that was created by one app, and I want it to be able to be used by another app? That's great. Just put up the sharing sheet. Yeah, but for some reason, this graphic editor that works with JPEGs is not showing up in the sharing sheet. Well, then there must be a really good reason why you shouldn't be able to do that. Like, and I compare that to, this is, I think at this point in 2023, it's not a case of like Android being better than iOS or iOS being better than Android. There are things that will attract some people and not attract the others. To compare to like putting music files on this device, I just simply drag files onto it or download it into whatever folder I want. I have an open file system, and then I've got 3 different music players for 3 different kind of uses. And for each one of them, I just simply say, scan through this folder or scan through the entire device for anything that's a FLAC file. And within like 10 seconds, every single FLAC file that I've pointed it to is now part of that music library. It is the way the things should work. And so I understand that there's a dogmatic difference at Apple between the iPad line and the Mac OS line, that I think it really is like, we are going to make it a pain in the butt for a lot of things, but the payoff is going to be, it's going to be way more reliable than any Mac we've ever made, ever was.
Again, I just
wish there were a couple little things that
I'd come back to that third-party driver thing. I mean, I think that, there's UI issues as well, but the third-party driver is, A lot of times when I look at Windows, I say, if you could just get rid of Win32, you wouldn't have nearly the security issues. And Microsoft's answer is, but we can't because so many people need it. And I think in a way, this is what Apple has done. They said, well, what if we made a new device that is absolutely simple and robust and reliable, and but you're going to have to give up some things like the ability to install these third-party apps from anywhere. For one thing, you got to go through the App Store, and especially third-party low-level drivers. Those are problematic.
It also feels just like a limitation of iPad OS. Now, clearly, Apple sees it as Pro. We have Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro 10 on iPad, right? So
yeah, but the way can you install the plugins from those though?
So supposedly coming soon, but
no, you won't.
The point I'm trying,
they're gonna make sure that everything that gets installed on an iPad comes from Apple.
But my point is, like, when I record on my Mac with Audio Hijack, I'm not afraid to click to another window, and that recording is still going to happen. Like, it's still going. Whereas if I'm recording on my iPad, even in a Pro app or even in Ferrite, I'm not sure what's going to happen if I swipe up to go home, or what happens if I like tab over to a different app. Like, yes, it should still be recording, but I just don't trust it because I don't see iPad OS as being able to handle that. And I think a lot of times, I think from experience, people have experienced this where you're recording or you're doing something, you go to another app, and all of a sudden a process stopped in the background, and you just can't have that when you're doing something like podcasting. You want to make sure it's recording. And on my Mac with Audio Hijack running, I can look at my menu bar and see the little peak meter always going, and I just know, like, I trust that it's happening. And until iPad offers that kind kind of, I guess, security from not necessarily like privacy security, but
it never will. And that's the whole point. It's not that they can't. They've got the processor, they got the RAM, they got the storage. It's not that they can't, it's they won't.
Yeah.
And I think that this makes sense, at least in my mind, that there's this division in these product lines, and we offer something for both people. It's not
I keep coming back to something I read about the creation of Disney World and Disneyland, and someone who worked with Walt Disney in building these parks said that Walt wanted to make sure that if you came to one of his parks, you would have a fantastic time. And he thought he was so adamant that you have a fantastic time that he wanted to make it impossible for you to have a bad time, even if you were trying to have a bad time. and that's what I think about. I think that's about that. That's that philosophy set on two clicks on the knob on Mac OS, and it's set to like 8 out of 10 on iPad OS. And this is where I don't think that Apple is BSing like anybody. I think that really is their philosophy. I mean, there once or twice every couple of months, I wind up resetting the audio drivers on my Mac. And on the one hand, I can think of, because the Mac is a lot more powerful and a lot more open, if suddenly I lose all audio, I can just simply go to the terminal, enter a sudo command, and simply restart that audio driver and have things back. The flip side of that is, but if you were using an iPad, that audio would never have screwed up in the first place, because nothing can screw up at that low level.
And there's a reason, Stephen, you worry about background recording suspending when you change screens, because Apple doesn't want. Initially, because of the iPhone and battery, they don't want stuff running in the background, but also they don't want stuff running in the background because that's where your troubles begin, right? And so I think this makes perfect sense to me. And yet I look at what Mark Gurman is describing for the iPad Pro 2024. The code names are J7, 17, 18, 20, and 21. They'll be M3. They'll have OLED displays, which is awesome. They'll probably have the best displays out there until we get OLEDs on the MacBooks. 11 and 13 inches, which is a little bit bigger than 12.9, I guess. Revamped Magic Keyboard. And as you said, Andy, the new accessory, according to Gurman, makes the iPad Pro look even more like a laptop than the current setup and adds a larger trackpad. And that's actually a fix, because the Magic Keyboard's trackpad is not great. So, Apple is moving it more towards something that you could say, well, I could do, that's my laptop, except I firmly believe they don't want to, that they really.
And they're using the same chip as the Mac, right? That kind of calls it into question, because like the truth is my MacBook Air and my iPad Pro use the same chip, and therefore, but they are very different in terms of what their functionality is. And that's fine. That's a choice that they can make, but it is something that you think of as a user. You're like, well, wait a second. What about like, why aren't these things the same? But they aren't. That laptop report is interesting. The idea that I wonder if it's going to be a heavier, because weight is the concern there. The cantilever design is there because they're trying to push the center of gravity forward so it doesn't tip over backward. So, either there's a kickstand, which I'm really against because I think kickstands ergonomically are terrible and you can't put them in your lap, or they're going to make a heavier keyboard case, which I actually think is probably the right way to do it. There are some other companies that made like clip-in keyboard cases for the iPad, and the key is just to have more weight in it. And if you're Apple gets to design the iPad and the accessory together, right? Any other accessory maker just has to make do with whatever Apple provides them, but Apple can design them together. And I wonder if there's a keyboard trackpad case in the future that is heavier. It's going to make it more like a laptop, but you could do stuff like have a supplemental battery in there that would not only, right? Like power can flow both directions. So what if imagine the marketing if they say, and then you snap this iPad into this thing and it's got like
8
laptop things and it's 24-hour battery life or something like that.
Right, but
they
it's
could
24
totally
hours to watch movies.
And it can also charge your AirPods.
Right.
Yeah, all that amazing technology though. And I love iPads because again, I had a podcast all the time on it. But again, like use case, even like editing a website, I manage a lot of Squarespace websites, and on the Mac in Safari, everything works great. And even though Apple has said Safari on the iPad is supposedly desktop class and is like parity with the Mac, like it's just not. Like if I try to manage a Squarespace website on my iPad Safari, like it looks like it should do everything the same, but just click-wise functionality, like mouse activity, it's just not the same. And so on that beautiful screen, like I watch stuff on my iPad Pro and it looks amazing. Like I love watching stuff on it, but I want to be able to do more on it.
Yeah. Let's take a little break. And then when we come back, I do want to talk about podcast movement and some final thoughts. But first, a word from ZocDoc. You know that feeling when you finally get the thing you've been searching for, right? Your whole life. After spending hours researching and reading thousands of reviews, you finally get the perfect, what is it? Sparkly disco pants. Sure, that's it. Or designer dog hoodies or whatever. It's the thing. It's the right thing. 5 stars, arrives tomorrow. That's just a nice feeling. How come we can do that with sparkly disco pants? We can't do that with our physician. If you want to see a good doctor, maybe you got a recommendation from a friend. You call. We're not taking new patients. Or, we can make an appointment in June of 2024. And really, is it enough just that your friend said this is a good doctor? Wouldn't you like to know a little bit more? That's why we love ZocDoc. There is a way to book and find great doctors who are available, many with appointments in 24 hours, and with verified patient reviews. So you can see exactly what that doctor's like. It's more than just, this is a great doctor or this isn't a great doctor. It's how that doctor communicates. Some people want a lot of information. I want all the options, doc. Tell me everything I could do. Some people, I'm one of them. Just tell me what to do, doc. I don't need the options. Just you tell me. You're the expert. ZocDoc, but you get the choice, right? You can see the reviews. Verified reviews from actual patients. ZocDoc is a free app where you can find amazing doctors and book appointments online. We're talking about booking appointments with thousands of top-rated, patient-reviewed doctors. And it's not just doctors, it's specialists, it's dentists, chiropractors. You can filter specifically for the ones who take your insurance, are located near you, and treat almost any condition you're searching for. They all have verified reviews from actual patients, no bots. They're very curious. ZocDoc does a really good job curating all that to make sure these are real patients. The average wait time, I just got this stat. This is so cool. To see a doctor booked on ZocDoc is 24 to 48 hours. That's it. You can even get same-day appointments. Now, this isn't for acute care, obviously. This is for a physician you want to see for a particular thing or maybe on a long-term basis. Once you find the doc you want, though, you can book them immediately. And it's just a few app taps right in the app. No more waiting awkwardly on hold to talk to a receptionist. Go to ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. Download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. I've used this many times. It really works. It's fantastic. In fact, I just realized I I need to find a new dentist. I'm going to go to ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. Now, I know you're smart enough. You could just go to the App Store and download ZocDoc. Please, would you do me a favor? Go to the website so they know you saw it here. And then, it'll say, here's a link and you can download it. I know it's one extra step, but it helps us a lot. ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. Thank you, ZocDoc, for supporting MacBreak Weekly. I saw this tweet with Micah Sargent and Stephen Robles at the Podcast Movement. I just got the new Zoom F2 recorder. It's only a 2-mic setup, but it's a 32-bit recorder. I'm really excited about using it in the field. It's cool that you were able to get all the latest equipment to try out. That's really neat. And
it's great.
And it was how were you on the show floor at Podcast Movement out there in Denver?
For a podcast conference, there's not a lot of places to record a podcast, ironically.
You'd think. Look, they don't have a podcast studio for people to do their shows from.
There was one brand that had like a couple of pods, but it was book solid. Podcast movies is thousands of people. So yeah. I was scrambling. Me and Micah, I think we were just going to like find a closet to record in. But then the B&H Photo people, they had a whole table set up. Nice. And I was like, I have enough tools to try and take out the background noise. Let's try it. And it worked. So we just sat there on the expo show floor, the people walking around.
Where it was very loud. I know, because Lisa did a panel there with Memberful, who does our Club Twit. And by the way, they're great. And she was excited about doing it because we really wanted to give Memberful a big plug and tell all the podcasters this is a great way to do a club. And nobody could hear anything they were saying. It was so loud. And Lisa came back. She was hoarse because it was so loud.
It was difficult. Yeah.
So what's the latest podcast news? Is there a future for this nascent business? Nascent. It's 20 years old. It can drink now.
It's an interesting environment because I listen to all the techie podcasts like you all, the Twit Network, the Relay.fm network, the Incomparable and all that. And when you go to one of these trade shows, it's all these shows like I don't typically listen to, but it's these big names. Wondery is there, Disney is there, Spotify is there, and they're all talking about these very large shows.
Will Ferrell and Meghan Markle and superstars.
Huge names.
Yeah.
And you see these sessions that talk about monetization, or they talk about dynamic ad insertion, and I feel like the gap between kind of the independent podcaster who can still get sponsors on their own and things like that versus these massive names, celebrities really doing podcasts on these networks like Wondery and Spotify. I feel like that gap is widening a little bit. And the rise of video is such a huge push, which obviously you personally have been doing it for forever. But for many podcasts,
I always crack up when I go to these things because it's like, we did that in 2007. Oh yeah.
I was downloading MacBreak Weekly video on my iPod Video. That's why I got it, just so I could relive that experience. But so that's interesting. But I do have some. I don't know if it's concern, but I do wonder over the next few years where it comes to ad agencies and where sponsors go to actually book spots on podcasts. Is it going to flow where you basically have to be doing dynamic ad insertion and tracking and all of that?
Yes.
And I remember the first time I actually experienced it, I won't name the podcast, but I pressed play on a podcast I've listened to for many years. And the first ad that played was in the Tampa Bay area. And it was such a shock to me because it was the first time I experienced a targeted ad in a podcast. Every other time before it was something, it was baked in. I knew the sponsors, every time you hear, a sponsor on a podcast, it feels familiar. And this was this is the future because someone can actually target my local area and actually they
do that via IP address. They don't necessarily have spies in your closet.
But what was interesting was I downloaded the episode before I flew to Podcast Movement, and I was listening to it on the plane, and it was there where I heard the Tampa Bay area,
right?
And so
that's where you downloaded it. Yeah.
That's where I downloaded it. So it was a very visceral, I was tracked for this ad. And so I do wonder if that's how you're just going to have to do it, especially if you're growing a new show and you want to get those sponsors. Are you going to have to play that game long term? And so that's kind of the feeling I walked away with. And again, I don't know if it's concern or if it's just kind of like nostalgia where it, the podcasting landscape is not going to be like it was 5-10 years from now. I'm not sure. So I don't know how Lisa felt or what
it's
you
funny.
guys think.
She exactly echoed those exact same sentiments. She said, we're in deep trouble. She says all ad tech all the time. It's all tracking. And, we're big fans of RSS, which really can't track you. It knows your IP address. So direct ad insertion does work. We use AdvertiseCast, which is a Libsyn company. In fact, some people, in not in this show, but some of our shows, you will hear ads in the language of your country if you're listening outside the U.S. or for your local car dealership or whatever. And just to reassure you, tracking is not exactly right. They're using IP geolocation to figure out where you are, which is not the end of the world. There is, though, a push towards much more draconian tracking with pixels and so forth. And we push against that. It's very hard to, because advertisers are getting that kind of service from Google and Spotify and others. And, when I see Apple announce, as they did at Podcast Movement, more tracking information for podcasters, you'll know more. I know that that's really not for podcasters, that they're collecting that information for advertisers in the long run. So,
and what's tough is, the value proposition for a podcast ad in the past was the MacBreak audience is a known audience. And so if it's a tech company,
it's contextual advertising based on the context the ad is running in. And we still prefer to do it that way. We also prefer to do host-read ads, not inserts. That's how we would prefer to do it. And I think and frankly, for the advertisers who've been with us for more than a decade, they know it works. Right. But I think more and more agencies who are not the advertisers, that's why we like doing direct business, because the agencies, it's too much trouble for them. They're going to buy 20 different podcast networks. They don't want to bother having a personal relationship with them. So it's a very different thing.
And that's difficult. And again, for an advertiser, I don't like it, but an advertiser could say, I want to reach 1 million of this age demographic in this location.
Of course they want that.
Of this gender. Yeah. Then they'll just buy the ad space rather than buying the podcast. And that is the shift that kind of stinks, honestly. I agree. I think it was valuable for a sponsor to say, if it was Squarespace, that they're going to buy an ad on the Twit network and they know it's going to go to a tech-centric audience who is probably building websites themselves or helping others, and it just makes sense, and that can be a relationship, hopefully long term, where now it'll just be like every other ad, just give me this demographic, this location, this interest, and that's what I'm just going to buy ads across this ad agency that has so many shows, and those dynamically will just be inserted. And it's unfortunate. For a long-time podcaster like you all, I'm sure I think that's where it's going, and I don't know, I don't feel great about it.
How about you, Jason? You didn't go to Podcast Movement. I don't think I'll go again. I stopped going a while ago, and I wonder if Lisa will go again. But do you worry about this kind of stuff?
I do. Podcasting is a much larger part of my job than I anticipated when I started doing this.
The same thing has happened, by the way, to blogs. And there is some hope. Blogs initially were very much personal, like podcasts, and if you had ads, it was personal kind of ad sales. Then the big ones came along, but what's good news is here you are, Jason, doing 6 colors, and it's still viable. That's
it's just not what I thought it would be ad driven. I thought I'd make the bulk of my living from blog ads. And in fact, I make the bulk of my living from podcast ads and from memberships, which takes us back to something like Memberful.
Yeah.
And it's funny because in COVID time and right before, a lot of us were like, we got to get on the membership train here because who knows what the ad market will do. And the ad market did fine for a while, but it has changed. And I will say, being a niche publisher, I have advertisers who want to reach my audience still.
Exactly.
Because I'm not trying to build this enormous reach. And that's the challenge is you're either in a volume game or you're in a niche game. And while some of this ad tech stuff is going to push down and try to force niche publishers to use that ad tech, there are also still advertisers who value a very specific audience and will pay for it. And that's why I'm skeptical that it's going to go all the way to everything is self-serve, ad network, on the fly kind of stuff. I think that there's still a place if you're playing the niche content game for other stuff. But if you're playing the broad content game where you're just some more impressions, volume, that's a different game. That's volume, and that's going to be a lot harder. But like with Relay, I mean, Relay has seen a slowdown for sure, but they have built a lot of direct relationships that have allowed them to extend and do better than some other other kinds of podcasts.
Credit to Mike Hurley, who has really maintained those relationships with advertisers and so forth, and that's what we do here too. And
yeah, exactly.
I think at some point we're going to have a hybrid model where we're going to be, the club is very important to us. It's about 7,000 members strong now, which is still only 1% of the total audience, but it's something that keeps us going. And that plus advertising, I think we can survive at the level we're at. We may not. At some point, we may have to shrink. We might have. Ironically, Stephen might have to stop doing video. That's the most expensive thing we do. And most people don't watch the video anyway. So you mentioned Squarespace. I was really pleased. Squarespace celebrated their 20th anniversary a couple of months ago. A timeline to squarespace.com. And we're in the timeline. March 2009, Squarespace lands first podcast advertisement. Anthony Casalena makes a big gamble paying nearly $20,000 for a Squarespace ad to appear on the podcast This Week in Tech. It was more than $20,000 because he bought like a 7-month contract, but that's okay. A post-purchase survey, and this is the part I like, proves the risk to be worth it, revealing that a third of the company's new subscribers heard of it through the plug. So that's good. That's good. We didn't expect this. They didn't mention it, and we were very pleased to see it. They stopped buying ads on our shows several years ago when remember this? They bought a Super Bowl ad. And we said, how much did that cost for 30 seconds? And you could have bought 5 years of us for that. So it happens. It always happens.
Well, I do think, direct membership is going to be a huge part for independent and podcast networks.
We have to do it.
But I also wonder how much subscription fatigue is also going to play a part for those people, because I support multiple podcasts directly and some networks, but I also feel like I don't know how sustainable that is, as more podcasts are going to be asking for direct support. And networks like Relay, like Twit, can offer, here, pay this monthly and you get the benefit of ad-free and bonus content across all these shows. But if you're truly an independent show, like you have one podcast and you're not a part of a network, I think it's going to be a tough sell to ask people to pay you $5 a month for a membership for ad-free or bonus content, as opposed to paying a network $5 and get multiple shows. And so that, I think, is a tug of war, not a tug of war, but something that's going to have to be figured out. Maybe if it's like creator networks that individuals can join to kind of be a part of. And so their listeners might get more value for a certain amount of subscription per month. Or I don't know. I don't know if subscription fatigue is going to hurt that.
Let's not talk about that. Okay.
Sorry.
People say that, but on the other hand, when you go to the grocery store, you continue to buy cottage cheese every week. I mean, I think at some point people are going to say, well, yeah, because I know what you mean, though, because I subscribe to, for the shows, I have to subscribe to the Wall Street Journal and New York Times and Bloomberg and all sorts of stuff. And it's thousands of dollars a year. It does add up. But that's, I think it's good. It's the way it is with streaming too. You want to consume content on the TV content. Increasingly, it's going to be because you're going to pay a subscription for it, right?
Well, people are stopping paying for all those streaming services too, which I think, as Disney is struggling with right now, like what networks do we drop because they're not profitable enough? And so I do think subscription fatigue is real, and that's why I don't know if there'll be another shift to something else, but I don't know what the future is. And I guess that's why it's unsure. And I love podcasting. That's what's a struggle, because the industry was small enough or niche enough where you could have your audiences and have a show.
I love the community.
Your audience,
yeah.
And the community is great, and those people are still there. And so just hopefully the future of monetization can still, handle or support that kind of relationship between the smaller shows and the audiences.
I honestly think that's the thing advertisers and agencies are missing is you're buying not a show, you're buying a community. You're buying access to a community. And that's something podcasters are really good at, is building community, at least the successful ones, at building community. And that has value, I think. to an advertiser. When we told people about Squarespace, that carried weight because we were talking about something, I don't know. If you're not a member of the club, you can see why we keep plugging it. Visit twit.tv/clubtwit. We keep the price low. We give you a lot of value because we understand about this subscription fee, $7 a month, or a lot of people said, well, can we buy a year? I was reluctant at first because I didn't know how long we'd be doing the club, but now, okay, yeah, you can buy a year. You can also get family plans and corporate plans. You get all the shows ad-free, ad tech-free as well. You also get the access to the Discord, which is really a great place to hang. I honestly, that was an unexpected benefit of the club, is the community in the Discord is fantastic. Plus, shows we don't put out in public because, there's no ad support for them. But we know the club supports them. And so that makes a big difference for us with Hands on Macintosh. Micah does that, and Hands on Windows with Paul Thurrott. And we're not doing these to say, oh, see, you should join the club if you want to get our content. We don't really want to put anything behind a paywall. But it's also fair because club members, in effect, are paying for it. These are shows that don't have advertisers yet. And when a show gets big enough that we can sell ads like This Week in Space, we do move them out of the club into the public. We don't want to put stuff behind a paywall. That's never been our intention. But we also make sure that people who give us their $7 a month get something of value. Lots of events. We put our community manager, Ant Pruitt, does such a great job. He just finished that photo walk in Petaluma last weekend. Stacy's book club is coming up. We're working on an untitled, so far, AI show with Jason Howell and Jeff Jarvis. That's every Thursday afternoon. You can participate in that. If you're sci-fi fans, the club is heaven. Daniel Suarez, Hugh Howey join us with a fireside chat in about a week. And then John Scalzi in next month or October. That's going to be incredible. These are all things we do for the club. Renee Ritchie will come back and do an Ask Me Anything November 16th. He is, of course, now the creator liaison at YouTube, but a longtime host on this show. So lots of stuff, lots of benefits. We try to make it worth your $7 a month. I think it is. If you're not yet in the club, please go to twit.tv/clubtwit and join us. We would love to have you. And as this discussion shows, that's more and more how podcast networks like ours will survive. Both Stephen and Jason have memberships, and I think that's really important. I don't know what you do to support yourself, Andy, but I wish you the best.
Well, I get mostly paid by PBS and by various clients and various podcasts, including this lovely podcast.
Yeah, actually, some of your Club Twit money goes to this man right here.
And I was planning when I relaunched Shenango.com to also have like memberships, but now I'm starting to think I'm not really depressed at this conversation, saying that I can't have people for $5 a month for the things I write. Who am I to say that I'm worth half of Netflix?
Yeah, it's hard to go lower than $7 a month because there's Memberful takes its cut and it ends up being more like $5 a month. And I don't know how you can go much lower than that and still offer value and so forth. So 7 seems to me as low as you can go, and it's pretty good, I think. But anyway,
the fun thing is I'm writing like 5,000 to 10,000 words a week anyway. So
well, there you go. I would pay for an Andy Anako.
Stay up an extra 45 minutes and give things for other people to publish.
Can you send us some sideburns once in a while and something like that? Just little extras like that. Here's a whisker.
Now, you beautiful genius! You've just given me the idea for the $15 tier. you get mutton chop updates all exclusive to the Double Diamond supporters.
Apple, in testimony before the Australian Competition Authority, they're investigating the way Apple preloads iPhones with their own apps. And, of course, the App Store, as everybody else is. Apple, giving evidence before the ACCC, said they loaded iPhones with their own apps and not those of competitors because, quote, when you take it out of the box, we want it to work. But furthermore, just to prove Apple's goodwill, they actually artificially suppress their own apps in search rankings just to avoid criticisms of self-preferencing.
Yeah, this was pretty interesting because they haven't been charged with anything. They haven't been found to foul of anything. They were just hauled before this tribunal to basically on a finding that they might be violating antitrust with their app store. And it was very, very interesting the way that this vice president was couching it. I didn't know that they were sandbagging their own search results for their own apps. This was something in this guy's testimony that was interesting. And he was also said, I don't know where the quote is, but he was saying that actually, our stuff ain't that great. I mean, people prefer like Google Maps to ours, and people prefer Spotify to Apple Music. Like if we wish we were abusing our market privilege with Apple Music. My God, I mean, geez, we're just treading water here, dude.
Apple hired a former U.S. Justice Department and FTC trial lawyer, Kyle Andier, as VP of Products and Regulatory Law, knowing that, maybe his experience will be helpful here. He said, when we actually look at the evidence in the marketplace, when we look at the relative popularity and downloads of different apps, we see in almost every category, consumers are picking an alternative, even when the Apple version's pre-installed. His example was Spotify. Spotify has 3-to-1 users over Apple Music in Australia. Yeah. So there you go.
If there was something wrong with the way Apple's treating its own apps, quote, you wouldn't expect in category after category that the Apple service was number 3 or number 4th or 5th or 6th or 7th most popular service.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
So,
yeah. That's making taking a lemon and making lemonade, I guess.
Yeah, by basically saying we stink. Oh my God.
Our stuff, we put it on there, but it's so bad.
PU. I mean, I hope no one back home is listening to this because I'm under oath because I got to tell you.
All right, we're going to take
burger cheese.
We're going to take a little break, and then, gentlemen, if you'd prepare your picks of the week, we will do that next. I do want to give you my pick of the week. Our sponsor, Mylio. This thing is so great. When Google bought Picasa, I was like, oh man. And then they really kind of killed it. So many people I've talked to used Picasa to organize their photos. They had all these, folders and collections and stuff. And then it disappeared. When I decided I don't want to pay for Adobe's Creative Cloud, but what am I going to use for my digital asset management? I've been using Lightroom. What am I going to keep track of all my photos with? And I couldn't find anything appropriate. Looked at a lot of different solutions. I found the solution. And here's the good news. It's not just for photos. It's for documents too. It's called Mylio, Mylio, Mylio Photos. It's a smart and powerful system that helps you keep all of your digital assets organized and secure and private. There's no cloud component to this. Like, Adobe really wants you to use the Adobe Cloud or Apple use iCloud. Or if you want, you can be completely offline. What I do actually is I have Mylio back up my photos to all my devices, and you can choose thumbnails, optimized, or originals. So smaller devices like my iPhone, I use thumbnails. But then if you want the full photo, you just click on it, and you can edit the full photo, download it, and edit it. And then I have it all backing up to a Synology NAS, my own cloud. So I've got all of my photos, and I don't have to worry about privacy. Plus, and here's a huge advantage. You may say, well, yeah, but I like how Google Photos or Apple Photos picks faces and places. No, Mylio Photos has AI built in and does it on device and does a really good job. I now have over 200,000 photos in my library on Mylio Photos. I've heard of people with millions, no problem at all. It automatically, I have to tell it, okay, that's Lisa, that's Michael, that's Andy, and after I tell it a few, it then goes through all my photos. It does a brilliant job of finding everybody's faces, so they're all tagged. It also does smart tagging with all kinds of variables, monuments and oceans and seashores. And it's incredible. Smart tags make all your photos searchable. You don't have to spend time tagging, organizing the folders. You don't have to, everything is organized automatically for specific objects, activities, animals, plants. You can say blue. I want to see all my photos with a lot of blue. Smart tags is brilliant. And because it works with your existing filing system, Mac, iOS, Android, Windows, you don't have to spend time importing. I told it, keep a track of my Flickr, get all the Flickr photos. Here was a huge one. I knew I had stuff on my Google Photos that I didn't have locally. I did a Google takeout. It automatically imported, and I've done this manually before, and it's a pain. This did it automatically, imported all of my Google Photos. And then it has an incredible deduplicator. So I was able to remove those duplicates and just find the stuff that was only on Google Photos. It's incredible. This is an app you want. And you know what? I just buried the lead because it's free. Yeah, don't wait. Preserve your digital legacy today. Go right now. mylio.com/twit. Try Mylio Photos free on your computer or mobile device. I actually added my documents folder too. It imports PDFs. It does OCR. So it's even tagging the documents. It can read Microsoft Word documents. It can read a whole host of document formats. And on the images, it does OCR. On the PDFs, it does OCR, optical character recognition. So I have the contents. And I can organize it via contents with smart tagging. Now, you may say, well, how can it be free? They do have a plus plan, of course. But everything I just described, you can do in the free version. Mylio.com/twit. mylio.com/twit. At least try it for free. Mylio Photos. mylio.com/twit. If you have been saying, I need a way to keep all this stuff organized, I found it. And it's incredible. And it's completely, this is maybe more important to me than others, but it's completely cross-platform. So Android, yep. iOS, yep. Windows, Mac, yep. It's really incredible. mylio.com/twit. We thank them for their support. There's an example of a company that wants to reach our community. They know that, you especially are going to have some interest in this. And so they didn't have to do all that. Well, I want 24-year-old men in Fresno. They don't care about that. They want MacBreak Weekly listeners. Mylio.com/twit. Thank you, Mylio. We appreciate your support for what we do here at MacBreak Weekly. All right. Let us talk about our picks of the week. And Jason, you've got one I want to lead off with because it's really important.
Right. Yeah, we already mentioned the guys at Relay FM in other ways, Stephen Hackett and Mike Hurley in this episode. So I thought we might as well just jump right into it. September is Child Cancer Awareness Month. And every year, the guys at Relay FM, they campaign to get donations to raise money for St. Jude Research Hospital, which treats children with cancer for free and also funds a lot of research into childhood cancer, trying to find cures for diseases. Stephen's oldest son is a cancer survivor and was treated at St. Jude. And they have raised a couple of $1 million in the last few years for St. Jude. They've got a goal here that they're going to blow through, and then they'll set a new goal. But they have raised a lot of money for St. Jude. It's a great cause. And if you would like to join, you can get some stickers. You can get a screensaver written by James Thompson. There's all sorts of things that are in the package there, but it's going to be happening for the next month. They do a telethon at one point for 12 hours. That's happening. I'm going to actually fly to Memphis, Tennessee and be on that telethon. Lots of stuff going on. Relay.fm/St. Jude, or if you prefer, stjude.org/relay. Either one will get you there. But please consider donating to St. Jude, and doing it under the banner of Relay FM is a great time to do it too.
That's really awesome. That was the inspiration for our New Year's Eve benefit where we raised money for UNICEF. But boy, it's really, I realize how hard it is to raise money. I think we raised $75,000, something like that, over a 24-hour period. It's hard work. And to raise $2.2 million over the years is very impressive for a very good cause. So good. I'm glad we could give them a plug.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In fact, it reminds me we should probably be doing something like that ourselves. Relay FM for St. Jude. Just go to, what's the easiest URL?
Relay.fm/St. Jude.
STJUDE.
Yep.
Mr. Andy Anako, your pick of the week.
I read comics. I have, of course, the Comixology app.
Such a shameful admission, but okay, all right.
No.
Hello, my name is Andy, and I'm a comic book reader. I know.
It depends on whether you have a positive reaction to the Krakoan corpse revival protocols. If you're hip with it and you like it, then we don't have anything to talk about. If you think it's a travesty, sit down. Let's have a knish. We'll talk about it. But not everything that I read is on Comixology, like the stuff you buy every week on Marvel and DC and the major publishers. A lot of times I back a Kickstarter and they give you the reward in the form of a digital comic, or you go to all kinds of places like archive.org where like public domain comics, like the original, like Plastic Man comics, Police Comics, the originals, The Spirit, or in many cases, independent comics from the 80s that I used to enjoy that just simply disappeared, but someone has scanned them in and collected them and turned them into standard CBR.cbz or PDF files. So my pick this week is an app called Panels, which is a beautiful comic book reader for iOS, for both the iPhone and for the iPad. It does the three things it needs to do well, it does extremely well. The reading experience is really, really good. It's because you can't, there's even if it's a PDF, like you can't have like open something in iBooks and have the same sort of experience you'll have. A comic book is read in a special way that is not going to be read like any other kind of book. So you need to be able to go from panel to panel. Sometimes the artwork is really detailed and nice, and you want to kind of zoom in and stuff like that. So the reading experience is exceptional. The organization experience is also exceptional. It's very, very easy to group all of these individual comic book files into, hey, here's a series of Action Girls. Action Girl Sarah Dyer's really amazing independent comic from the 1980s, and keep track of the things that you've read, things that you're in the middle of. You have widgets on the lock screen to get right back into the thing that you're reading. But the third part of it is really, and we were just talking about this earlier, the difficulty or non-difficulty of getting these files on the device to begin with. And this, if there's any way that humanity or God has created that you can put a comic book file on the iPad, Panels will support it. So for instance, the bulk of my digital comics, I just simply plug it into my desktop via USB, and then I simply drag the files into there. It just simply, they populate. You can watch them populating on the screen as you go, and then you can simply organize them there. It'll work with the Files app. So any app that's compatible with files like Dropbox, Google Drive, an attached storage device, that will work just fine. Or a method that was very, very popular at the very, very beginning of life with iPad, which is, okay, Apple's made things so hard, we're going to include code that just basically turns this app, your iPad, into a web server. So you can just it will just give you a web address on the local network that if you open this up in a web browser on your desktop, then you can use that to transfer files from one place to another. I've never been in a position where I was not able to copy something over. And it's not a stickler for format. There have been times where like it's not even a comic book. It's just that there is a web comic that I like so much that I just sort of right click and save to a folder. And if I just simply zip that folder and copy it into Panels, it will basically let me read those strips day by day, scroll. Really, really well done. And there are two different ways to buy it. You can buy it on subscription, by which means you get the latest version as they come out. Right now they're on version number 2. Version 3 is imminent, or you can buy it outright for $20. But the thing is, I bought version 2 like a couple of years ago. Now I'm going to have to buy version 3 for $20. Your choice. But yeah, it really is exceptional. And there is enough time to get into the second part of this, which would be, there are places on archive.org where, again, there are places where you can get, either public domain or abandoned comics, so to speak, and some of these are the most entertaining things that have ever been done. And when it's a comic like Action Girl, where I'm sure that this wasn't put on archive.org necessarily with the permission of Sarah Dyer. However, it's not in print. It hasn't been in print in 20 or 30 years. If she were to produce her own digital version of it, I would immediately buy it and then also give her an extra $50 in her tip jar for how good this comic was. But this is a way for those abandoned comics, out of print comics, to still have a life, to still have an audience, to still have somebody on a podcast saying, hey, there's this comic called Action Girl that's all women doing all the art, women doing all the writing, women as the editor-in-chief and the publisher and the colorist, and they're just interesting points of view and interesting stories with interesting characters.
There's a lot of
panels,
a lot of CBR, CBZ files on internet.org. I was just wondering if they had Calvin and Hobbes. I bought the hardcover, complete Calvin and Hobbes, and but I don't have a CBR version, but I could get it from internet.org. Don't do it unless you bought it, because then that's not right.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's another long conversation that we can't have, we don't have time for. But yeah, there are times where, there's sometimes where there's something that's never been made digital. However, I have bought it. I purchased it as individual issues.
Yeah.
And then I purchased it a second time as like a hardcover collection. Right. And I don't feel so bad if I happen across it that, oh, by the way, someone also scanned in that hardcover so that I can have it on I don't necessarily feel as though I have to spend $40 to buy a digital version on Comixology, since I've already bought it twice, for God's sake.
Did you read the profile of Bill Waterston in the American Conservative? Fascinating. He's recently he's got a book coming out, which is not a Calvin and Hobbes book, but he talks about why he retired, and it sounds like he was literally killing himself making this comic strip. He said at one point, I lost my lead time, and I was the night before it was due writing these comic strips, and he said my entire life was consumed by it, and he had to stop. This is really worth reading. It's a weird place to find a profile of Bill Waterston.
Yeah.
But it's a fascinating story. And I imagine we're going to see more of him because he is promoting this new book. So maybe that's why it happened. Why Bill Waterston vanished.
He left behind something magnificent. So
he did. He did, and it almost killed him making it.
Yeah.
It almost kills me that I had to read it in a publication that has RFK Jr. on its front cover. But that's another story for another day. It is worth reading the article, and I'm still a huge Calvin and Hobbes fan. So if you're curious what happened to Bill Waterston, very interesting piece on him. And I think that would be a good reason for me to get this panels, just so I can have the complete Calvin and Hobbes on my iPad mini. Now I'm happy. Mr. Stephen Robles, we don't normally make our visitors do all the heavy lifting of a pick. It looks like you got one.
I do. I'm cheating a little bit. I'm doing like kind of a trifecta of picks, but it's one workflow. And, every day someone's born who hasn't seen the Flintstones. And so I want to share about a couple apps.
What?
That maybe people haven't heard of. That's true. And so the first app is Downy, which is an incredible app by Charlie Monroe Software.
Yeah.
Must have. You can download any internet video app. I don't want to say specific websites because sometimes you get in trouble. But anyway.
That's how I get all the audio off of those YouTube videos. Yeah, I'm just saying.
Right. Well, I didn't want to say it, but yeah, so you said it. So yeah, you can download, but also like if there's a news website that you need to pull a video from for whatever you're using that video for, Downy, it even has an in-app web browser where you can actually log into a website and actually download videos behind a login. So it's pretty amazing. So Downy's amazing, but I use that in conjunction with an app called Transloader. And this is an app that you run on your iPhone or iPad. And then there's a utility that runs on your Mac. And what you can do is from your iPhone, share a link. It's right in the share sheet. And I can send a link to Transloader, which transports it to Transloader on my Mac. And Transloader on my Mac can then send that link to Downy. So as you can see, the workflow might be you're looking at a video on your phone. Maybe you're even in an app that plays video. I hit the share button on my iPhone. I hit Transloader, and it sends that link to my Mac, which automatically sends it to Downy, and Downy automatically downloads it and saves that file wherever I choose. And so if you choose, say, your desktop, which syncs with iCloud Drive, I could literally have an internet video available to me on my iPhone in my Files app in iCloud Drive in just a few seconds.
How'd you hook it up to Downy? Is that built into Transloader, or did you have to write a script?
It's built in.
It's built in.
No, it's built in. There's no scripting involved. It's very
Nice.
easy to connect the two. And so I do all of that. And then one final piece of the trifecta, if you want to go this far, I actually use an app called Hazel.
Oh, I love
which is a
Hazel.
utility on the Mac, which Hazel's amazing, and can automatically move files based on rules and folders. And so what I have it do is any MP4 video that hits my desktop or downloads folder gets moved to a folder on my Plex server.
Oh my
So,
God.
As you can see, the workflow might be I'm watching a video on my phone. I tap Transloader, sends it to Transloader on my Mac, which sends it to Downey. Downey downloads that video file, saves it to my Mac. Then Hazel takes that video file and moves it over to a folder in my Plex server. And now I can stream it on my Plex account in just a few seconds. And that's the workflow from front to back. So
That's so cool. So
Okay.
you're looking at something on your iPhone, press a button, and now it's on your Plex server, and you can watch it on the big screen sometime at your leisure.
Exactly. And I do that, again, I have kids and they have varying levels of abilities and restrictions on their devices. And so maybe there's a YouTube video I want them to see, but they don't have access to just browse YouTube at whim. And so I will use Transloader and Downey, and now they
Nice.
can stream it in Plex on their iPad just a few seconds after I saw it on my phone. And it's not like they need any more access. They're just watching it from our Plex server running in my closet. So that's the workflow.
Very nice. Very nice. You know what?
That's
This is how our pick should be from now on. Not just a simple app, but share a workflow. I think that's really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
No,
That's fun.
that's amazing, particularly because like you're actioning this from a phone that has limited and expensive bandwidth. You're basically commanding, hey, let's go. The computer at home that's doing nothing, that's connected to gigabit internet. You do the downloading of this, then you do the transcoding of this, and then that is really. I kind of want to do this just to do it.
Yeah, I don't
It's great.
think
And I have-
I'd be using it a lot, but this is the thing. It's cool. You can do it. Yeah.
It's cool. And I have it just running on a Mac Mini sitting in a closet. Transloader and Downey are just always open. And, sometimes one of my sons plays Rocket League, which is like a video game or whatever. And there's very long tournaments that are like 3 hours long. And like, I don't want to tie up my Mac Studio doing it. I don't want to sit around waiting for anything. So I'll just send the link to this 3-hour Rocket League video with Transloader to Downey, and then it's going to download and move it as it does. And then a couple minutes later, it's 3-hour video in Plex, and I didn't really have to do much.
And the reason, by the way, you have to do that, besides the bandwidth, is the iPhone and the iPad don't allow you to install stuff like Downey.
Right.
So this is an perfect example of a workaround. The share sheet is really maybe the single most powerful workaround on iOS
And
is the share sheet.
I'll head off a bunch of comments you might get too, because there supposedly are shortcuts that allow you to do things like download a YouTube video, but I find that they break soon after they are useful.
Oh, I wonder why.
Obviously YouTube does not want you doing this.
Right.
And so a lot of those shortcuts I find that just don't work for very long and they break. And so Downey has been just a rock solid tool for me on that.
Absolutely, double underscore support for that. It's Downey is bulletproof, and anytime you've got any content that you want to keep for whatever reason, it's worth pasting the URL into the box. Even like when people post art on Instagram that I just want to save a copy of, it'll just simply pop that out there. The list of URLs, like domains that it can basically find media from and remove it from, are amazing. And if it can't find it automatically, it has a guided extraction mode where you say, okay, well here's a Firefox compatible like web browser window. Just do what you got to do, and in the sidebars, like here is like a list of all of the audio, all of the MP4 files that are being accessed and streamed. I think that's it. Then click it, and then great, it's 1.8 gigabytes. I think that's the movie that I wanted to get. Yes.
Yeah, and you can force MP4 format in Downey, so it's going to download a compatible video format. And Downey works with shortcuts. And so I actually have, if I ever need to download a podcast episode from some RSS from shows that I manage, then I actually have a shortcut where little menu comes up. I click the show I'm talking about, and that shortcut sends the latest episode MP3 link to Downey, and Downey downloads that audio file as well. So it's just really powerful.
I mean, the number of times where there's been like 2.5 hours of Senate testimony or whatever, or a presentation that lasts an hour and a half. It's like, I just need a transcript of this. The easiest thing is why don't I just have Downey grab this audio, then send the audio to an app that will simply do speech to text, and then 10 minutes later I've got the audio instead of having to listen to.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of a funny story about protein folding. It seems as though an amino acid walked. Oh, God.
Actually, this is a good reason that everyone should have a Mac Studio on their desk running all the time.
That's right. Mac, you could do a Mac Mini. It could be a Mac Mini. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
M2 Pro.
My Mac Studio is a server in a lot of different respects, and it's always running because I don't shut it off. And so it's always nice to have that. And if it's running on an M2 or an M1, it's not using a lot of horsepower, and it's a great thing. I use AirMessage. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. AirMessage is a server I can run on my Mac that hooks itself into Apple's messages and then serves it up to my Android devices and other devices. So, in fact, AirMessage now supports on Android, can be the SMS app on Android. So my Android devices actually have Apple Messages and SMS as my full messaging.
What?
Again, the difference between like Android and iOS. It's like, no, we don't support this ourselves, but hey, if you want to come together, if you want to create some sort of Rube Goldberg system to make it work, third-party developers, we're not going to stand in your way.
That seems a little Rube Goldberg, but it works pretty well. Awesome. It works pretty well.
I don't imagine, that's not encrypted, right? I don't imagine AirMessages, you get encryption.
No, yeah. I mean, you would if you send. So, yeah, I guess you would because Apple's encrypting it on their end. So yeah, all it is sitting on the Mac Studio where it's unlocked on the Mac Studio because I'm reading it and it sucks that into in transit. Is it encrypted? Probably not. No, through the AirMessage is probably not. But I don't know. That's a good question. I have a password and it uses your Google account as the login, so you don't have to do it. Does not translation. Have you used it, Andy? Do you use it?
I tried it because I don't have a real use for it day to day, but I set it up and tried it.
I know you're an Android user. I thought.
Yeah, exactly. And I it's easier to have like one less layer, one less thing to go wrong. It did work for the week or two that I tried it, and was working okay. I was just worried about, what happens when the transport changes a little bit and suddenly I don't know why I'm sending things but not getting replies back. And it's because I decided to do something clever. No,
yeah. It is an open source project. It's free.
Yeah.
Airmessage.org. So I know it's not doing anything. It's self-nefarious. And my messages aren't going through its server. They're going directly from my Mac to the Android device. So I think it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple bridge, really, when you get down to it,
and it works really well, much better than Beeper, because Beeper, they actually are running a Mac in their or an iPhone in their server room, and you have to let Beeper get your messages. This way, it just goes through the internet to my phone.
Little robot arm with a cartoon
solves
globe.
The problem, though, if you want to use an Android device and you're in an Apple ecosystem. Really, it's
because I mean, really, it's really too much to ask for Apple to support an international standard that's run on the majority of all the phones out there that offers secure transportation messaging from one way to another. It makes more sense that we put ourselves through this. That you're absolutely right, Apple.
Actually,
stand your ground.
Cole Fewer, who is the creator of AirMessage, actually has an open letter to Apple saying, "Please, free iMessage.
Yeah,
please, it deserves to be open." But meanwhile, we got this kind of weird hacky workaround. Yeah. But again, now I don't mind installing Transloader because I've got this Mac just running in the background all the time.
Yeah,
and now I can use Transloader as an additional thing on that. So thank you, Stephen. Thank you for being here. Now, I didn't mention the reason Stephen's here is Alex took the day off. He's busy working. He will be, as I understand it, he'll be back next week. But Stephen, thank you so much for filling in. You have a hurricane coming your way with some crazy name, Ainara or something?
I don't even know now.
Idalia. They got weird names now. Yeah.
Idalia, yeah. So that might be coming tonight into tomorrow, but it should be.
Looks like it's going to go north of you a little bit. So
it's north of me, and in Florida we just have hurricane parties.
You're just used to this. No big.
Yes.
No big
deal, but it was a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me on again.
Good. We love having you on. We'll have you back soon. Stephen Robles, it works for a variety of different places, Apple Insider, of course. But the best thing to do is go to beard.fm.
That's it.
Because you can find out more about his beard. No, because he is the bearded teacher, and he teaches you everything you need to know from his evil lair in Tampa, Florida. He does podcasts and all. Well, I don't know if it's evil. It's it's the side of a mountain. It could be evil. I don't know. No, I'm kidding.
No mountains. No mountains in Florida.
No mountains in Florida.
I can't have it. No, if you try to have a cave, it's just underwater. That's the thing. That's why there's no villains in Florida.
No villains.
You can't have a secret cave.
There are no villains in Florida. See, I didn't even know that.
That's true.
Beard.fm. Thank you, Stephen. You're the best. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Andy Anatko, when are you going to be on GBH next?
I'm going to be on next Friday at the Boston Public Library at 12:30 in the afternoon. Come on down and watch me. What I imagine a respectable geek who's going to be on YouTube will dress like. That's it. I assure you it's going to be very, very funny. Also, I'm going to be on the Gray Matter podcast live.
That's Alex's podcast with the wonderful Michael Krasny.
Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting.
It's going to be fun. So so you can listen. I think it does a stream live. This is the first time I've been doing it.
I don't think. Well, he didn't when I did it, but I think that was the plan eventually. So,
but I believe it's going to be like episode 49, episode 50. So we're recording on Friday. It'll probably be like the week after that. So.
Yeah, and you'll really enjoy it. It's a great podcast to listen to anyway. He has some of the best people on because for years he was the host of a forum on KQED, our public radio station in San Francisco. So he has a really good Rolodex. I'm glad that they got to the eyes so that we can get Andy Anatko. Gray Matter on any podcast client that you like. Good. Well, I'll listen to that. I can't wait. Yeah. I don't think they do it live, but you can certainly hear it after the fact. Thank you, Andrew. Mr. Jason Snell has a few podcasts himself. You'll find out about everything he's up to at sixcolors.com/Jason. When is the Memphis Telethon?
Memphis Telethon is later in September. I think it's the 22nd. I want to say, yeah. And it's
all the
Eastern
Relay
to
FM
midnight Eastern.
Will all the Relay FM people show up for that? That'll be a something.
I think there are only 4 of us who are going to be there in person. I've never actually been on the telethon in person before, but we get a lot of people come in over Zoom or there are pre-recorded things. So you'll end up seeing and hearing from most of the hosts during the event. Nice. They got 12 hours to fill. I mean, yeah. Anybody you want to turn up, anybody who turns up will probably be able to be on at some point during the 12 hours that they're podcasting.
Isn't Mike in the UK?
Stephen's in Memphis and St. Jude is in Memphis. And St. Jude actually has its own, the fundraising arm of St. Jude has its own studio for stuff like this.
Perfect. Yeah. That's great. Again, sixcolors.com/Jason. Always great to see you. Thank you, Jason. At least one of us got an invite to the Apple event. We do a MacBreak Weekly every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC. You can watch us do it live at live.twit.tv. There's actually audio and video, so you can watch or listen live. If you're watching or listening, chat at irc.twit.tv. The IRC only makes sense if you're doing it live. That's why we do it live, so you can join us. irc.twit.tv. You don't need an IRC client. You can use your browser to do that. Of course, Club Twit members can use our Club Twit Discord to chat about the show as it goes on. After the fact, we have edited versions of the show, not lightly, very lightly edited versions of the show at our website, twit.tv/MBW. There's a YouTube channel dedicated to MacBreak Weekly. And of course, the best way to get it, subscribe. You can subscribe to the audio or the video feed in your favorite podcast player. You'll get it automatically that way. We will be back next week. And again, we will be doing a live stream of the event on Tuesday, which I guess means we'll have a slightly delayed MacBreak Weekly. We'll do one right after September 12th, 2 weeks from today, the Apple iPhone 15 event. That should be fun. Thanks for joining us. But now it is my sad and solemn duty to tell you it's time to get back to work because break time is over. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here. In case you hadn't heard, Home Theater Geeks is back. Each week, I bring you the latest audio-video news, tips and tricks to get the most out of your AV system, product reviews, and more. You can enjoy Home Theater Geeks only if you're a member of Club Twit, which costs $7 a month, or you can subscribe to Home Theater Geeks by itself for only $2.99 a month. I hope you'll join me for a weekly dose of home theater geekitude.